Just checking if everything is working. I think it is. Yeah, it looks like it. Hey, good afternoon everyone. Just tuning in after a busy day to see the live stream of Grinding Games to reveal the Dawn of the Hunt content patch update. So, you know, as you can see on the counter, it's about 2 minutes from starting. So I'm really curious what they will do. I will actually get a notebook. The nerd that I am, I got a notebook so I can actually take notes of all the stuff that they're talking about. And then we'll see. We'll take it from there. I will, when they're talking, I will basically mute myself, my microphone, so you don't hear me in the background. Don't hear me in the background. So yeah, need to keep an eye on my lighting. It's very sunny here, so it's gonna be. I'll look like a light bulb. I hope they're gonna reveal some good stuff. I hope they at least reveal another class besides the hunter that they already sort of announced. So I really hope so. I actually hope they're announcing the druid. That would be cool. There's obviously been some rumors about that. I do hope they announce a couple more ascendancies than the 2 they announced as well. I think they announced one for mercenary and one for the warrior. I hope actually they announce ascendancies for all 6 available classes at the moment. That would be good. I really hope they will announce, basically they will go through their quality of life updates, performance improvements, crashes, all that stuff. I know there's all kinds of stuff going on with transactions and packages being bought on console which is not working, so I hope they're addressing that kind of stuff as well. So that's my, you know, in a nutshell, my expectations. I'll go on mute. Here we go. 2, 1. Here we go.
I'm Jonathan Rogers, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. Welcome to GGG Live. Well, it's been a little over 3 months since we launched Early Access, so it's about time for our first major content update. Today, we're going to show you an exclusive reveal of Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt, which launches on April 4th. Twitch drops are enabled on today's live stream, so make sure you follow the instructions below in order to claim your Executioner's Guillotine finisher effect. Now in today's stream, we're going to take you on a deep dive into the new Dawn of the Hunt update. We'll cover a new class, 5 new Ascendancy classes, and huge expansions on character systems like unique items and support gems. After that, it's on to the in-game improvements, including changes to systems, a bunch of new encounters, and lots of other content. We're going to finish up today with a live Q&A session where Ziggy D will ask Path of Exile 2's game directors, myself and Mark, your questions from Twitch chat. Now we have a lot to cover today, so let's get started with a trailer for Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt.
We as Mary are guided by the Spirit. It provides prey, shelter, even love. But for me, one day, all that were changed. The Spirit, it showed me something. Something forbidden. And to defend all I loved, I used it. I lost everything that day. But fate weren't finished with me yet. I'll right the wrongs I've done. I'll do what I must, no matter the cost. I will hear the Spirit once more.
Hey, that's a mount. No way.
Don't make me kill you. I shall bathe in your blood.
Okay, so this class might have the capability to ride a mount. That's interesting. Okay, so that's the hunter. Let's see if they have something else.
Now, as you can see, in Dawn of the Hunt, we're introducing the first new class since early access to PoE 2, the Huntress. The Huntress is a spear-wielding Asmeri warrior. Born into a society with strict traditions, she was exiled from her homeland after using the power of a skill gem to defend her village. As a dexterous spear user, she specializes in both melee and ranged combat, dashing into and out of battle. Spears have extended range and a short dash, but unlike other melee weapons, you can also throw them. In order to make a hybrid ranged and melee character work, we had to do a lot of thinking about ways to make it fun to both enter and exit melee range. The first skill you will get as a Huntress is Whirling Slash. As well as striking in a circle around you, this skill creates a whirlwind that blinds your enemies. Leaving the whirlwind will make it explode. The more Whirling Slash is used, the bigger the whirlwind, and the bigger the explosion. Once you're out of there, you'll want to follow up with something ranged. Whip your spear around to shoot twisters towards your foes. These twisters bounce off walls and can hit enemies multiple times. You can also throw twisters inside a whirlwind to shoot out extra tornadoes that do way more damage. In her offhand, the Huntress will usually want to hold a buckler, which allows you to do a new skill, Parry. While holding down Parry, your character will counterattack any incoming attack from monsters near you, stunning them. In addition, the monsters will take extra attack damage from your follow-up strike. Some specific skills are designed to be used after a parry and have extra effects. Disengage is a skill that does a quick jump back, damaging enemies in front of you, and it can be used to interrupt other actions, like dodge roll. If you use it against a parried enemy though, it causes an explosion and gives you a frenzy charge. Just be careful. If you parry too much, you're going to get stunned and possibly killed. You can combine this combo with Whirling Slash. Slash, parry, disengage, and you'll get an explosion from the disengage and the Whirling Slash. The Huntress also has a variety of elemental spear throw attacks. You could use Lightning Spear to bounce lightning between your foes. Or you could throw explosive spears into the ground. These spears take a while to detonate, but when they do, they'll incinerate anyone caught in the blast. All spear throws on the Huntress can also be empowered by frenzy charges. For example, explosive spears will do an even larger explosion and leave fire on the ground. And these empowered versions can activate even more combos. Using Whirling Slash over ground fire will suck it into the whirlwind, adding fire to the explosion. Using twisters inside a fire whirlwind will shoot out fire tornadoes as well. And you can do similar combos with ice and lightning too. Now, a key aspect of hunting is exhausting your foes by causing blood loss. This skill is Rake, which dashes towards your target and unleashes a deadly slash, opening up wounds on your enemies. Follow up with Disengage and watch them bleed out as they run towards you.
That's pretty cool.
On the health bar of monsters, you can see how much blood loss the enemy has experienced, and the Huntress has skills to take advantage of this. For example, using Blood Hunt will thrust forward and cause a bloody explosion. The more blood loss, the bigger the explosion. If you want to cause bigger bleeds, try out Rapid Assault. The final hit of this multi-hit combo will stick a spear into your enemy for a big bleed. Now, Explosive Spear and Rapid Assault both result in leaving spears behind, either in the ground or in enemies. But there are other skills that leave spears around too, like Storm Lance, that leaves an electrical spear that arcs towards enemies. But what can you do with all these spears? Detonate them, of course. Thunderous Leap will allow you to jump onto and explode any spears either in the ground or in your enemies. Now, as well as hunting animals, the Huntress also has the ability to work with them. While fighting any beast, you have the ability to tame it and use it as a companion. You can only have one companion at a time, but it will keep the mods that were on it.
No.
Try to find a rare beast with good mods to take full advantage of your ability to tame them.
That's cool.
Now, this is just the beginning of the Huntress. We've really tried to make the hybrid ranged and melee gameplay work for this class by having a huge amount of synergy between ranged and melee options. There are 22 new skills available for the Huntress. By endgame, you'll be slinging hundreds of insanely powerful spears, sending forth spirit animals and summoning the might of Solaris from the sky. But we still haven't talked about ascendancy classes yet. What can the Huntress ascend into? Well, the first Ascension class you could choose is the Ritualist. The Ritualist has embraced the darker side of his merry traditions by harnessing the power of animal sacrifice and plague. The Corrupted Life Force skill causes all enemies around you to grow volatile blood boils on their skin. When those enemies are slain, the boils will burst, spreading corrupted blood to all enemies around them. The Ritualist also excels in taking advantage of magical trinkets. The Unfurled Finger skill allows you to equip an additional ring on a finger around your neck. Taking Mystic Attunement increases the bonuses of all the rings and amulets you have equipped. Now, this is one of my favorites. As the Whispers Ask grants you a new skill, Ritual Sacrifice. Use the skill on the corpses of slain rare monsters to absorb the power in their blood to give you one of their modifiers for a short time. Specialize further into Ritualistic Sacrifice with As the Whispers Demand, which allows you to perform that skill on yourself instead of a corpse. Cut your own hand, sacrificing some of your own blood to empower yourself. The Amazon Ascension is for those looking to hunt more than just beasts. Trained as an elite guard to the most important Asmeri elders, the Amazon will use more traditional fighting techniques mastered to perfection. The Predatory Instinct skill will cause you to reveal weaknesses in the defenses of rare and unique enemies, causing you to deal more damage. You can see those weak spots represented on their life bars. While using Elemental Infusion, any charges you consume will infuse your weapon with elemental power, causing any projectile attacks to explode on impact. The Critical Strike skill is as simple as it sounds. It takes your excess accuracy and gives it to you as critical strike chance. Additionally, you have skills like Mystic Harvest, which allows your elemental damage to leech life, and Asmeri Brew to be able to use either flask to restore both life and mana. So those are the two new ascendancies for the Huntress. But those are not the only ascendancies in Dawn of the Hunt. We've added a new Ascension class for 3 of the other existing classes too. First up, for our warriors out there, we have the Smith of Kitava. The warrior is a blacksmith in origin, taught by his father Renly. With this ascension, you can take your smithing skills to new heights by embracing power from the insatiable one himself, Kitava. Smiths of Kitava are master blacksmiths and have the ability to forge their weapon, quite literally. Using the Against the Anvil notable skill, you can enhance your weapon with fiery destruction before any battle. After doing so, your attacks will release explosions on hit for maximum devastation. You can also use the power of Kitava to summon an animated copy of your weapon to fight alongside you. A great blacksmith can do more than just forging their weapon though. Their armor can be enhanced too. Now you might think this Ascendancy class tree looks a little abnormal, and you're right. There's a lot of notable skills all disconnected at the bottom there. By taking this point here, which is free to assign, your character is unable to equip body armors with mods of any kind. So your body armor must be normal. Sounds like a downside, right? Except now in true blacksmith fashion, you get to craft your own body armor by taking those disconnected notables with your points. If you want your body armor to grant life, take this notable. If you want resistances, take this one. There's so many choices. Think of it like you're crafting your own body armor, just in a more literal sense. Now, let's move on to those who prefer the reassuring feel of a crossbow in their hands, the Mercenary. Alongside the existing Ascension classes, the Gemling Legionnaire and the Witch Hunter, you can now play as the Tactician. The Tactician is a former Blackguard elite. Free from the duties of a Blackguard, he is able to use his training to decimate the monsters of Rayclast and earn a healthy income doing so. This training comes in the form of various skills like Suppressing Fire, which causes all projectiles to pin enemies. When combined with the Right Where We Want Them notable, your pin not only stops your enemies from moving, but stops them from performing actions too, similar to freeze. With a soldier's training, the Tactician also works well cooperatively. Using the whoever pays best notable, you can place multiple banners at once. The watch how we do it skill gives a portion of your weapon's damage to your allies as well.
Nice.
But if that isn't enough, you can also command your army of off-screen archers to unleash hell and carpet an entire area with arrows. Finally, witch players will be able to join their legions by becoming undead themselves. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're introducing the Lich Ascension class.
Oh, yeah. That's
The Lich is a master of chaos and curses and could sacrifice her life to enhance her energy shield. The Crystalline Phylactery skill allows you to nominate a jewel in which to contain part of your soul, massively increasing its power. There's just one downside to splitting your soul this way though. If you have no energy shield, your mana costs will shoot up. The Necromantic Conduit skill causes you and allies in your presence to have unholy might, granting extra damage as chaos damage.
Oh, that's cool.
Rupture the Soul makes enemies you curse explode with chaos damage when slain. Dominion over Flesh allows you to apply an additional curse. It's safe to say you'll be the true master of the occult by choosing the Lich class. So Dawn of the Hunt has the Huntress and 5 new Ascension classes, but it doesn't end there. Let's take a look at some of the new skills we've added. Now you may remember we've previously talked about the Raise Spectre skill. It's finally complete, and it will be made available in the upcoming expansion. It can be found in the occult skills on the skill gem crafting panel. Raise Spectre is a skill that allows you to trap the soul of almost any monster in the game, which you can then summon in the skill panel.
Oh, that's cool.
Spectres cost spirit and will revive automatically if they die, but the spirit cost varies based on the power of the monster. You could summon an army of weaker monsters, or a few of the more powerful monsters. You can combine them with your existing skeleton minions, or summon exclusively spectres. It's all up to you and how you want to customize your army of the undead. Given that there are hundreds upon hundreds of monster variants in Path of Exile 2, it's safe to say you'll be experimenting with this one for a while.
Yep.
We look forward to seeing which monsters serve you best. Now let's move on to our next skill. Since we've been talking about summoning undead so much, let's have a change of pace and summon something a little more alive. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're adding the Summon Rower skill. Summon your friendly rower to aid you in combat as a minion. You can also mount your rower in combat at any time,
Nice.
allowing you to move at full speed, even while shooting arrows or throwing spears.
I thought this was already
Be
the
wary
case.
though, if you take too much damage while riding your mount, you can be knocked off and get overwhelmed. It's worth keeping an eye on your stagger bar, as falling off the mount can mean almost certain death. On the topic of new ways to enhance your
That's so
character,
cool.
let's talk about support gems. Support gems are used to modify your skill gems in meaningful and interesting ways. Currently, we feel that a lot of builds have insufficient options here. To alleviate this, we're adding over 100 new support gems.
Wow.
Hema crystals will enable a new kind of bleed build, turning the damage over time you would have done into explosive vile crystals. Alignment is a support gem for bow attacks, which can reward skilled players with good positional skills. Caltrops will allow you to litter the battlefield with hazards, slowing your foes as you fling spears through their
Nice.
ranks.
Okay, that's cool. So it's
There's
a lot of
plenty
bow.
more for every playstyle, such as
bow-oriented.
Enormity, Unsteady Tempo, Profanity,
That's sorcerers, I think.
Retaliate,
That's warrior, I think.
Syzygy. Yep, that's a real word.
I think they're giving a lot to warrior. That class was obviously not performing.
And many
great.
more. Now we've talked about a new class, new ascendancy classes, new skills, and new support gems. But let's not forget about the core of a true action RPG, the items. To start with, let's talk about uniques. We're adding over 100 new unique items. This time we've made sure to add uniques with a focus on mid and end-game tiers to make sure there are more exciting items to find for higher level characters.
Because
Let's look at some
they
examples.
sucked.
Embrace your inner devil with Chernobog's Pillar. It grants you a large amount of fire damage based on your block chance. The Coming Calamity allows you to become a true master of the elements, granting you all 3 Elemental Herald skills without costing any spirit. At the same time, it penalizes enemy resistances.
Let's see if they have a separate-
Wastegate is a belt useful for builds using a single resource like Blood Magic or Archmage builds. With this belt, you can use 2 life flasks or 2 mana flasks. It's up to you. Now, we could go through these all day, but we'll leave most of them for you to discover. Suffice to say, though, we want there to be way more cool things to find.
Looks cool.
Over time, our goal is to add a unique to every single base item type at a minimum, so that you can chance any base in the game. Now, given that we have the Huntress, we have a set of unique spears from early game all the way through the end game as well. One example is Scyther's Spear, which combines bleed and fire in a powerful way. It allows your ignites to be aggravated, dealing substantially more damage. We're also introducing a suite of unique bucklers with some interesting parry mechanics. Calgyra's Arc, for example, allows you to parry projectiles from any distance. And we're also adding our first unique charms. Bayra's Ambush will not only protect you from ignite, but will also
that's cool. There was not that much going on in the charm space.
In sum, there's just a ton of new uniques to find. We can't wait to see the weird and broken builds that come out of it. Now, we also want to talk about crafting options. In each major update during early access, we'll be continuing to add and improve the options here. We have various new crafting tools that have been added as rewards to many of the different types of new content that we're adding. But for now, I just want to mention the changes to runes. Runes add commonly available mods, but since they only have one tier, flat damage mods tend to get outclassed by in-game. So we've changed runes to have multiple tiers, allowing you to get higher tier mods than before.
Okay.
Our plan is to significantly expand the number of more specialized mods for crafting using socketables as we add new content over time. And the first new set of those comes from what we're talking about next. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're adding Asmarian Wisps, which can be found throughout both the campaign and the endgame. The Asmari spirit has made itself present in Rayclast, and it appears to be trying to warn, or maybe prepare us for the coming darkness. You will first encounter a manifestation of it in the Grellwood in Act 1, where you'll meet Delwyn, an Asmari hunter who is trying to find out what exactly is causing the spirit to behave this way. As you approach the wisp, it will flee, leading you past monsters. Any monsters it comes into contact with are infused by it, making them more powerful. Each spirit is associated with a specific revered animal within Asmari culture. This one is a wisp of the Great Bear, and grants enemies extra life and stun. The wisp moves faster the closer you are, and as you move away, they slow down to wait for you. But if you get too far away for too long, they'll dissipate and return to the woods. As you continue to chase the wisp, it will find and possess a rare or unique monster, granting it a new powerful ability. Because this was a wisp of the Great Bear, this monster now also has increased life and stun, but on top of that, it will periodically summon a large spectral bear that slams with wild fury. If you're able to defeat this foe, you will be rewarded. For each monster that was infused and killed along the way, the rewards will be increased.
I expected a bit
Each
more
wisp
about
has its own
crafting, if I'm
mechanics.
honest.
The Wisp of the Winter Owl is a primal wisp that causes enemies to deal extra cold damage, gain energy shield, and release wind vortices on deck.
So you get sort of
When
a...
infusing a monster, they will call down large
companion.
tornadoes to protect their host. The Wisp of the Wild Cat is a vivid wisp that causes affected monsters to deal more critical strikes and become more evasive. When it infuses a monster, it will summon a
I would
barrage of
expect
feline
I
spirits
did
that
expect
will
a bit
attempt
more
to tear you
about
limb from limb.
crafting, not only putting
If you're
gems.
lucky, you may
I
even
expected
find
more to
sacred
see about
wisps
how
that
to
can do
update
some pretty
modifiers
crazy
or
things
change
to the monsters
modifiers.
they
They didn't go
influence.
into that yet.
Like the Wisp of the Cunning Fox, which turns normal monsters
This is
into
really-
magics, magic monsters
I
into
think
rares,
this is really
and rare
seasonal
monsters
league
into
mechanics.
actual bosses. Asmarian Wisps can drop a new set of socketable items that allow you to craft a wide range of interesting new mods onto your items. Each one may only be used on a specific item slot. As mentioned, the Asmarian Wisps can be encountered throughout the game, but there's also a new endgame map called the Asmari Ranges, a mountain village where the Asmari once lived, now overrun with corrupt monsters. This map always has multiple Asmarian Wisps in it, and familiar, yet not quite the same boss fight. Asmarian Wisps can also be further modified by the endgame Atlas tree as well, and by tablets.
That's interesting.
But I'm not going to be the one talking about those things. In order to cover all the new content in in-game, I'm going to hand things over to Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Roberts,
And-
Game Director on Path of Exile 2. There's a ton to talk about with the endgame today, so let's dig right in. Path of Exile 2's early access began with a brand new endgame, and it was clear that it needed a lot of work. After absorbing your feedback, we're ready to make some epic changes.
I hope they update
The
towers.
first thing is, we just need a lot more content. In Dawn of the Hunt, we have made sure to focus on increasing the sheer number of interesting and different encounters you will randomly stumble into as you explore the endgame. And the second goal is to smoothen the progression through maps and reduce the amount of annoying busy work. To start with, let's talk about the new interesting stuff to find. Well, the most obvious thing to add are new maps. As well as the Asmeri ranges that Jonathan mentioned earlier, Dawn of the Hunt also contains 7 other new maps, all with their own custom encounters.
Okay, that's good.
Let's start with this one.
The Feral Megaliths map starts off in the wild Ezomite forests. As you progress through the forest, you will find mysterious rune-carved stones that, when touched, surge with energy. After activating all the stones, you can find a grand henge, where all the energy is coalescing. You can then start an encounter. The area darkens, a storm moves in, and a concentration of energy summons a dangerous boss. You must fight and defeat the boss to get its rewards. Once you have defeated it, summon another. And another. And another. And another. You have 10 total waves of boss fights which get incrementally more difficult. If you manage to defeat them, you get full boss rewards, but also opportunities to get new runes.
That's interesting.
These can only be obtained from this map.
Okay.
The Fractured Lake contains a surreal waterscape with fractured mirror-like objects.
Oh, this is cool.
As you move around the map, the terrain itself elevates from below, creating the ground you walk on. In this unique map, all the rare monsters are mirrored, so you're always fighting 2 of the same rare at the same time, which can prove quite difficult. If you manage to overcome that challenge and make it to the end of the map, you'll be presented with a broken
so it's
mirror,
only rare
a
monsters.
powerful altar-like object that contains an item within it. The item contained within is a new base type, either an amulet or a ring, that can be crafted to have additional prefixes or suffixes at the cost of the other. The last unique map we'll show today is one based around the essence mechanic. You enter a crystalline cavern, and you will find a powerful map boss imprisoned in the center. It is surrounded by many rare monsters, also imprisoned in essences.
So unique essence.
By freeing
Okay.
and defeating the rare monsters, the essence they held will be upgraded to a greater essence and be added to the imprisoned map boss. How brave are you? How many essences will you add to the boss? Overdo it, and you might lose everything. Underdo it, and you might regret it. It's your choice. Speaking of essences, alongside visual improvements, you're now able to apply Varlorbs to corrupt the essences with a range of unpredictable outcomes. It could increase the number of essences, re-roll all the essences to
But
the
you can
same
corrupt them.
type,
That's interesting.
or even upgrade the essences to greater essences. What if they're already greater essences? Well, it can upgrade those too. We have 4 new corrupted essences. Essence of Hysteria, Delirium, Horror, and Insanity.
Each corrupted essence has its own interesting combat mechanics. For example, the essence of Insanity causes you to question even your own mind, as monsters split into shadowy clones, and you must locate the real one before a devastating icy explosion freezes everything around it. Each of these has their own crafting outcomes. The essence of Insanity can be applied to a belt. It adds a mod that will ensure the next Varlorb used on the belt will guarantee adding 2 enchantments.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It's worth noting all the essences in the unique map can also be corrupted too, if you're willing to risk it. It's worth noting we have also added 10 extra Atlas passive points you can earn by completing 5 different unique maps.
Okay.
Now, new maps are just the beginning. We had a goal where we wanted to make sure you were constantly finding exciting new content, and that it could be lurking around any corner. So, we have added a bunch of new things that you could stumble into in any map you run.
On your travels, you will sometimes encounter rogue exiles. Others like you who have been exiled and are openly hostile. Some are malicious, some are mad, while others are simply fiends for loot. They will challenge you, a fight to the death. They use the same skills available to players, and even the same items.
That's pretty cool.
They aren't just dressed up in those items, they're actually using them. It's going to feel like a true player versus player situation. Of course, if you are able to slay these exiles, those items will all drop on the ground.
No, that's cool.
So if you encounter an exile using a powerful or valuable unique item, which you can see displayed under their life bar, you want to be damn sure you kill them. Because if they kill you and your party, they'll portal out, taking their items with them. Every fight will feel completely different depending on the items they come equipped with. These exiles are much smarter than your regular monster. They have capabilities to dodge roll, avoid your abilities with smart pathfinding, smart targeting,
So
and
everything
much
they
more
wear will
action-packed
drop
gameplay.
when you kill them. That's pretty cool.
Fortunately, they're like you, and they're not super durable. Unless, of course, they're wearing uniques like Calm's Heart, in which case, expect a longer battle. There are 12 different rogue exiles you can find, each with their own skills and personalities.
Nice. All right.
Some may insult you, while others may admire your honor in combat.
Another encounter you might stumble onto in Dawn of the Hunt are one of 4 new unique strongboxes.
Strongboxes are chests with modifiers. When you try to open them, they activate traps and spawn waves of monsters that you must defeat to access the loot. Let's
not
take a
been
look
super
at
impressed
2
with
of the
that so
new
far,
unique
to be
boxes
honest.
that are harder to find and behave just a little bit differently.
That's cool. Okay.
The Ogham's Legacy Strongbox has a corpse splayed out in front of the rune-carved stone.
So
Upon
this
interacting
unique
with the stone, you
strong
activate
boxes, that's pretty
forbidden
cool.
Ezomite magic, which revives the monster as a powerful rare. The Strongbox comes with a modifier which determines how many times it will revive that rare. Each time you defeat the monstrosity, the Strongbox revives it again, adding an extra modifier to the monster. With each resurrection, it becomes more difficult, but also more rewarding. This Strongbox is infused with thaumaturgy from ancient Faal technology. Eshel's Torment has a powerful artifact inside, and is guarded by chaos itself. Defeating the monsters will grant you a unique item, with a specific corrupted outcome. You'll have to find the other 2 for yourself to see what they do.
Interesting.
Now, let's talk about the introduction to the endgame. Upon starting the endgame, Doriani tasks you with cleansing corruption to help restore the land. However, in practice, the quest objective just sent you on a grind to clear 15
Yeah.
maps.
Yeah.
We wanted to make the quest to unlock your Atlas passives much more interesting.
Now, Doriani is tasking you with a more specific objective. On the Atlas, you will find areas of corruption caused by the beast. In the center of each one, you will find a corrupted nexus, the source of the affliction. In the areas leading up to the nexus, you will notice that corruption spills out from slain enemies and amalgamates into powerful monsters. Corrupted maps existed on the Atlas before, but we've done significant work on improving these monsters. We've also done a full pass on the modifiers on these maps to make them more interesting and more rewarding. Once you reach the Nexus, you'll have a new task: cleanse the source of corruption. When you defeat the last rare in those maps, they will spawn one of 3 terrifying bosses, amalgamations of corruption itself. After defeating that boss, Doriani will come and cleanse the corruption for good. As the remains of the boss are purged of corruption, it coalesces into raw crystallized power, which you can use to gain points for your Atlas passive skill tree. The upgrade system that allows you to add and enhance content in your maps.
That was the case already before. I
We
think,
didn't
right?
stop there though. When you complete a corrupted nexus, all of the remaining surrounding corrupted maps will become cleansed maps.
Oh, okay.
Cleansed maps also have new monsters,
Oh, nice.
a new boss, and their own set of modifiers and rewards,
Yeah, they have like a
including
crystalline,
finding fracturing orbs by slaying cleansed enemies. These orbs can be used in crafting on a rare item to cause one of its modifiers to become fractured. A fractured modifier is one that cannot be modified by any means.
Ah,
You are able to freely modify the item,
this is useful.
ensuring the fractured modifier will never change. If you get the right item with the right mod, it can prove to be a very powerful crafting base indeed.
yep.
You must now choose. Do you complete all the corrupted maps and then the Nexus? Or maybe you beeline to the Nexus, complete it, and do all the remaining maps cleansed. Both have rewards to entice you and challenges to assess.
Now, let's have a talk about towers.
One
Yeah.
thing we've had a lot of feedback on is the busy work around running towers and managing your tablets. The first change we've made here is that we have reduced the number of towers drastically.
Okay.
So there are now 1/3 as many as before, but we've made them much more powerful. To start with, tablets now inherently add twice as many mechanics. But that's not all. Running higher tier maps and towers now increases the number of mechanics applied by tablets. By tier 15, the bonus is double, allowing a single tablet to now add 4 times as many mechanics as before. So, We're running far fewer towers, dealing with fewer tablets,
Wow, 28
and
28
affecting
maps
even
in
more
Reach.
maps than before.
And the
But
Reach is
because
much
there are fewer
much
towers
bigger.
overlapping with each other, you won't get as many opportunities to stack different tablets. In order to solve this, we've made it so that each tower can consume up to 3 tablets at once. You always get 1 slot on completing the tower, but if you can complete a tower with more mods on the waystone, you can unlock a 2nd or 3rd slot.
Okay.
Overall, this allows for even more juicing from towers, while drastically reducing the amount of busy work you have to do. On top of
That's
that,
good.
towers are much more interesting maps because they can now spawn with all mechanics, including bosses.
Good.
Each tower map has a new boss. Let's take a look at a couple here.
The boss fight of the Alpine Ridge map has 2 powerful witches contesting for territory. One witch has an affinity for ice, the other fire. Who will win? Hopefully neither. The boss of the
Cool.
Sinking Spire map is a remnant of the Val that has been charged with lightning. It uses a full suite of lightning abilities. But be careful, if any of them hit the surrounding constructs, they will power up.
Another thing that we've seen a lot of feedback about is sustaining waystones.
Yeah.
As we looked into it, we realized that the people who couldn't sustain waystones were dying a lot. A lot more than we had expected. And that made us realize something. During the campaign, the expectation is that you can die multiple times in order to learn how to overcome challenges. You are able to learn how the monsters behave, adapt to their skills, and eventually overcome them. But as soon as you get to the endgame, you're effectively no longer allowed to die if you want to sustain waystones.
Yeah, because you get a penalty.
By the time you are getting towards the end of endgame, we want you to have to be careful not to die. But it certainly shouldn't be that we have such a sudden shift as you run your first maps.
The first change we're making is you can now respawn and return to a map if you die,
That's good.
continuing from where you left off. When you start the endgame, you get up to 6 total attempts per map.
That's what
As
that's
you
what
add
it was.
more modifiers to a waystone, the number of respawns goes down. This means that as you get to the point that you're running every waystone as a rare, you will have to be more careful.
Okay. So it's about the
In
rarity.
parties, everyone gets to respawn that number of times.
Okay.
But we still think it's important that you can kill a boss in one go. In order to allow that to happen, we've made a change so that once you start the boss fight, it changes over to the same respawning system we use for pinnacle bosses. This means that the map owner can choose to respawn everyone at the same time.
Okay.
Another complaint we've seen a lot of is players not wanting to do the pinnacle content because of the experience penalty from dying. A change we've made here is that all pinnacle content now no longer grants experience, but also no longer removes experience on
Okay.
death either. Dawn of the Hunt also brings the first batch of Twilight Order reliquary keys from the early access supporter packs. These keys contain items selected by our supporters. They can contain any unique item found in Path of Exile 2. If the selected item is a pinnacle boss drop, then only special keys dropped by this content will be able to provide these items. For example, Hand of Wisdom in action can only come from a key dropped by Zesht.
Alright.
We're also making a change that allows pinnacle boss uniques to drop at any difficulty. Rarer uniques will be rarer at lower difficulties, but still possible to find. This applies to the drop chances for the reliquary keys from this content as well. We spoke about towers and tablets earlier, but we have also added a suite of unique tablets. Each of these adds crazy interactions to the map's influence.
I was wondering about that.
For example, this unique tablet allows you to run any map in a tower's radius without requiring connections, which can be quite useful for jumping gaps and traveling around your atlas.
Nice. Okay.
And this tablet causes all runic monsters spawned during expedition encounters to be duplicated, and weakens all expedition monsters that emerge from the ground. The Atlas tree has also been expanded, and you can find many of the new mechanics there, and improvements to existing ones too.
Now through this live stream we have mentioned quite a few new crafting options that we've added. New runes, corrupted essences, fractured mods and jewelry crafting bases. But we did have just one more crafting system to talk about. recombination.
Expedition was the only in-game mechanic that was lacking a crafting system, so that needed to change. Recombination is a mechanic that might be familiar to some players. It allows you to merge two items together, hoping to get the best elements of each on a single new item. This new crafting bench will be unlocked as you complete your first expedition, and requires artifacts found during expeditions to fuel it.
That's interesting.
The rarer the mods on the item you are combining, the more expensive the cost.
That wraps up all the major in-game changes we're talking about today.
So you can take a
With
scepter
all the system changes and new content, we can't wait to get in there,
with a
start
wand,
blasting
potentially
maps,
with fire
and
skills, for
obliterating
example,
monsters.
to get
There is
fire
one
skills
more
on a
thing we
scepter,
wanted
maybe.
to clarify before we
That's
move
interesting.
on, which is that all the content we've talked about today will be made available in the existing early access leagues, so you can play your existing characters.
Oh,
However, there will be new leagues made for those who wish to start in a fresh economy. It is recommended to start over and get the full new experience in the Dawn of the Hunt leagues.
that's
For
interesting.
all our existing early access players, we're really looking forward to joining you playing in this new update. For those who don't already have access and are interested in playing Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt, you are able to at any time purchase an early access supporter pack at www.pathofexile2.com. Additionally, the Paladin and Penance supporter packs are now available to purchase in Path of Exile 2 and contain 6 microtransactions each and the full pack's face value in points. All the microtransactions contained within these packs
Okay, they're doing
are
a bit
purely
of
cosmetic and do
sales,
not affect your character's
commercial
power
now,
or
but okay.
progression in any way. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. We're just about to start the Q&A with Ziggy D. With release at the end of next week, our community team will be posting crucial information you'll need for the release. Keep an eye on the news.
So one new class,
On release weekend, we
5
expect
new
to launch the
ascendancies,
new mystery box
a mount,
and many new microtransactions.
100 new support
including
gems,
Path of Exile 2's first
100
alternate
new
skill effect.
uniques,
Thanks for joining us
deeper
today
crafting,
and checking out our latest developments.
and an enormous
We're
amount
looking
of
forward
changes
to
to
playing the
endgame.
Huntress, trying new builds, and exploring the new endgame next week. We'll begin the Q&A shortly, so please get your questions ready.
So I'm curious if they actually will address performance.
Good morning, Exiles, and welcome to
Oh, we cannot hear you.
portion of today after a very exciting reveal with lots in it, exceeding my expectations, particularly in crafting. But on that note,
Okay, you guys,
hereby
I cannot hear him.
and Mark
Is he audible?
today and more in the future of Path of Exile 2. And you had an update about the recombination.
Yes,
first,
that's right.
so-
That's right. Yeah. So we actually
Is it
last
me?
night had a bit of a design session and realized that we weren't actually fully happy with the way the recombination worked. So we actually made quite a big change to it.
It's not me. Everybody is talking about it.
Which is basically that we sort of wanted to give a bit more control to the player over how recombination works, and we also kind of weren't really happy about the fact that recombinations is something that like kind of matters a lot for really
Yeah, this is broken.
players, but it wasn't something that was really mattering a lot for like the people who effectively got access to the feature.
Okay, well, they're doing a QA, but there is a problem with their audio. So
On the
I absolutely have 0 audio.
from each item, and then it gives you a percentage chance of success based on the number you pick. So if you pick just like one from one and one from the other, then the chance is much higher.
It's pretty
But,
bad.
If you pick
Okay.
if you pick 6 mods, it'll become practically impossible. So effectively,
So while they're talking and hopefully in the background fixing their audio, so there is one new class. Sadly, no 2 new classes. So there's the Hunter new class, or the Huntress. There's 5 new ascendancies, which is basically 3 ascendancies for the Hunter
we
class.
think that's a much better design.
And then
kind of use the recombinators actually become something that you can use a relatively.
I think they said
for the
5
first one you
new
get,
ascendancies,
still
but
this
that's
kind of
interesting.
thing
So I
that
think you
you
get
can
2
do
ascendancies for the Hunter,
to be able to do it.
then an ascendancy for the Warrior, which is
if you
focused on
put literally
Blacksmith,
six,
an
then it's gonna be
ascendancy
like
for the
incredibly
Mercenary,
large,
which is the
very much
Tactician,
that, but, you know, like 4 mods
and
might
then
be
one
things
for the
of,
Witch, which is, I think they called it a Lich.
all the other 2, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of
The other thing they're adding is a mount,
so
which is
hopefully that'll be in by
really
the
cool.
time,
The other thing they're
we're
adding
out.
to
We're
Witch
gonna-
is
we've got a
basically
plan of doing that.
The
Yeah, like I think
the gem that can actually make you
If
tame
it's not there for O2O, it'll
enemies
be
that you kill.
as soon as it can afterwards. But yeah, you know, spur of the moment, night before the live stream design sessions. But
The volume is coming up slowly.
increased player agency and visibility into the success result is just a win. And honestly, took way too long.
Still very low, but
You know, get to the point of us actually going, this is just straight up better to have observability into that and the freedom of choice. So.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. Recombination definitely felt like something that was both really high end in terms of the crafting that it was intended for, but also just
This is really bad.
It seems much more intuitive. 'cause you're
Yes. You just take what you
selecting
want.
the mods you want.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So it does sound like it's a little bit of a nerf for the very high end of crafting, though. Like,
It might end up being, but I'm not like. It sort of depends on how the numbers come out. Like because we only just designed this, we need to still work out like exactly how the numbers end up looking. But I mean, look, we have to make sure. Obviously, whenever we're designing any crafting system, we have to be really sure that we're not like screwing over finding stuff on the ground. So you know, you have to sort of have that balance.
I'm curious if they're listening to it
that's-
themselves
so
because
that's
it's
kind of
still
informs
very low.
everything we do with crafting usually.
One difference here, though, of course, is if the success chance fails,
The
both
items just
both
deleted,
items
yeah.
are destroyed as opposed to always keeping one.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So it's
Whether
basically
or
percent
not
chance for success, and if it fails, item's gone. So
What,
yeah.
roughly, what do you think you try to pitch at just choosing 2 mods out?
It depends on what mods you're selecting, but I'm kind of thinking kind of like 35%-ish kind of thing for like 2 normal mods, that kind of thing.
both
Like for
go
both.
over.
I hope you guys, if you're watching this in a different way, I hope you guys can hear it because I think it's pretty bad.
It kind of depends. We'll see how we
higher,
have to do
higher
some
tier
math.
mods are rare, and
Yeah, exactly. So it sort of
it
depends.
also the other thing is it's going to now have a fixed cost, so it's not going to
Yeah.
you know.
And the idea is
Go
like,
up based on
yeah, and the idea is like doing a single expedition should be enough to do a recombination. So, you know, you're going to be doing them like relatively often as you're doing expeditions.
So is the part of Expedition where you get to craft with the NPCs still a thing? Now that you're adding this?
Yeah, I mean, you've still got that whole mechanic, and like, so effectively it's competing for the artifacts.
Yeah.
Between recombination versus buying things from that other way.
So is there some buffs intended for that then to make it more competitive?
Not
with-
yet. It definitely needs some love in the future, but not at this time.
Yeah. It seems like the systems can kind of go hand in hand, where one is giving you items that you can then potentially recombinate.
That is also true. You can use the ingredients of one in the other, or the outcome of one as an ingredient in another.
Cool. We'll talk more about crafting a little bit later on for sure, because there was a lot announced there, which I'm quite excited about. Definitely exceeded my predictions for what you'd be adding in terms of crafting. But
That's a pretty bad Q&A
firstly,
if you
though,
ask
just
me.
a quick clarification on the league. So there's not going to be a wipe for the new players joining us.
Right.
If you were playing on a character, you can still keep playing on a character. But a lot of long-term Path of Exile players know the importance of playing on a fresh start, and that's also really important for you guys as well.
For sure, yeah. I mean, basically, if we don't have like any character that's come from before, you're just not gonna like, because the balance is so different and because so many things have changed. There's like no point in even listening to feedback for someone who's playing in the old league. Like, it really has to be that you're doing the fresh start, and we're sort of seeing how things go in the new economy. So like, we were really sort of, it was kind of an interesting decision about whether or not we should make it so that all the content is exclusive. Or rather, like, what amount of content would be exclusive to the league versus not. And the issue that we had is that, so I mean, like, a league means something in Path of Exile. You know, like, in order for something to rise to the level of a league, it needs like a certain amount of features. And the original thing we were thinking about doing that way would be the Asmeri and Wisps. But there wasn't quite like the kind of like meta mechanics and, you know, stuff with that. So like, we didn't quite rise to the level of feeling like it deserved to be a challenge league. And at the same time, we've also got a lot of new players playing Path of Exile 2 who never played Path of Exile before. So we're a little bit, like, we kind of were deciding, like, okay, should we make them exclusive or not? We sort of decided, you know what, for this one, we're not going to. And then what we'll probably try and do is for the next, league that we do, we'll actually make it a proper challenge league with like its own exclusive mechanic and so on. But yeah, it's a little bit funny because like in early access is a bit of a different situation, different, you know, like, and so yeah, we'll sort of see how this goes anyway. But certainly I would encourage everyone just like start again on a new character. And I think, you know, you'll have a much better time because, you know, obviously if there's structural changes to the passive tree. It's like if you log in with your character, you're going to have like, you know, your tree's going to get reset. You have to do stuff. You know, like there's things like that
did
that
slightly
are gonna,
better.
Happen that mean that
I increased the volume
and you
in
know,
my
also just
end.
balance changes, right? Like huge numbers of them. So you're going to have a better time playing from the start.
That's it. And speaking of the Huntress then, so we saw initial Huntress quite some time ago now and had some hands-on time with it and things, but I certainly, having played that before and played it now recently, the Huntress has changed quite a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So what was the how hard was it to get it ready for release? What was kind of the key there?
I mean, it's funny because class design is one of those things where every time you add something, it can make you reevaluate everything else, which is why it's so hard to predict
Yes.
like how long a class will take. So like it changed a lot since the last time we had like we were showing Huntress. And honestly, like, you know, it's like, while there are some skills that you will still see, like, it just plays completely different. And I mean, whenever we're looking at like how we're going to design something like this, it really comes down to like what is it's the special about the character class, like how can we double down on that to make sure it feels different. So with the Huntress, you've obviously got spears as a base type. The key difference between a spear and any other weapon type is that you can both use them at melee, and you can also use them at range. You can throw them.
Yeah.
And so because of that, you know, we really were just really trying to incentivize everything possible so that you use both of those things.
That's interesting.
And
That's a
you know,
good
action RPG
hybrid.
players, they, you know, generally speaking, you know, the balance can often be such that you only really want to do one thing and do that one thing well. So trying to incentivize the kind of ranged and melee is, you know, quite a thing. And I mean, the way we do it effectively is try to make sure that like there are combo chains where, you know, a ranged thing can combo with something that's melee, and a melee thing can combo with something that's ranged, and then also give you good abilities to move between the two states. And so that kind of means that you end up with a very like agile character, like you're constantly moving like backwards and forwards and kind of moving around. And I would say that like given that it's the Dex character, that it's good that it feels that way, that it feels the most agile of all of the melee character classes. So you know, that's been a really good one. But you know, I mean, look, there are, in terms of changes, I mean, look, there are just changes all the time. Like the frenzy charge thing was like relatively late in development. Like there's like quite a lot of things going on that just meant that, you know, the field kept on evolving. And another big one, of course, was parry, which I honestly was very skeptical of working. And Mark, Mark was the one who saved it. Honestly, like I was like, you know what? There was like 3 times I think where I was like, you know what? I don't think it's going to work. And then you were like, okay, I think you know, we're gonna save this.
I was like, give me a week.
Yeah, exactly. And it works completely differently for most games, because in most games, obviously, with parrying, the way that works is that, you know, you have to time the
movement.
Like to push the block button at exactly the right time. But that's just something that just wouldn't work in our combat system, because you know, you're often packs of monsters. It's just like you don't really have the ability to read combat in that way in our game. And at the same time, we need to make something where there's going to be like, you know, if a single monster in a pack hits you, you need to be able to respond to that with something that's going to, you know, you need to be able to respond in a way where you don't just then immediately get hit by a bunch of other stuff.
Yes.
So having it so that the parry, like it always parries, but it's then taking advantage of what the parry does to the monster by following up with something that's going to give you, like, you know, an explosion or something like that to kind of deal with the pack. That's something that sort of allows that counter gameplay to work in our game. So you've kind of got 2 primary parry follow-ups. You've got the frenzy charge one, which dashes back, which means that, you know, you don't have to worry about the monsters hitting you. And then you've also got the one that there's another one which I don't believe we showed there, which you know, called Fangs of Frost, which does a counter where you attack with ice, which freezes the pack. So it's another way to kind of, so in both cases you've kind of got something that's kind of dealing with the fact that you've got all these monsters around you. And that was kind of the biggest challenge I think that we had with that mechanic.
Yeah, I'll also make note of, there was a support gem I found that you can attach to any attack that allows you to follow up parry to generate a frenzy charge too. So it doesn't even have to be the backflip.
Yeah,
You
in
can
that case. Yeah, there's other,
create your own parry.
Yep, and then of course there's always Sniper's Mark, you know, and there's like there's a skill that does give you a guaranteed crit, so that's a potential option as well. Like you've got a few different ways to generate them.
Because parry guarantees a light stun.
Yeah.
You always get that small window to actually engage or do a thing before before you're under danger again.
And I'll tell you this, like, I am one of those players who never parry, right? In any game ever, because I can never do it. It's always just so frustrating. So
He must die a lot if he does that. If he doesn't
it
parry.
feels really good. You've both managed to
You
make
should
it
play Elden Ring.
something that's easy to do, because you can just hold the button down and parry at any time. There's no skill involved in that. But at the same time, you've incentivized making it so that you do want to still try and time it as best you can personally. By, well, how have you done that? How have you made it so that, like, you actually still want to kind of play it skillfully?
Well, I mean, ultimately, you know, anytime you're holding down the parry button is when you're not attacking, right? So you still want to kind of minimize the window, but at the same time, like, the timing is just not, like, you know, not as bad. But the nice thing as well is that, like, once you do successfully parry, it's very obvious. You get the sound, you get the, like, the token on the monster. It's very chunky.
Yeah.
So you know, it means it's very obvious when you're supposed to counterattack. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. I think that it came out really well. And honestly, one of the funny things about it is that it immediately made me realize like how bad shields are
Yes.
in comparison, which is why we're also trying to ninja in a change to how shields work at the last minute, which we'll see if it makes it
That
to
I'm
0-2-0.
I'm not using
I
Ray
was
shields
playing around
at
with it
all.
last night.
Yep, this
and,
was 8 p.m. last
yeah,
night.
Yeah, 8
at
p.m. last
Jonathan's.
night, exactly.
Yeah,
I was
messing with this.
Yeah, messing around with it. And I won't talk too much about how that's going to work, but effectively we want to make shields, the shields better as well, and kind of build something into those to make them more interesting. So that's the plan there. We'll see if it makes it for.
No,
Yeah,
let's talk
following
about
that
performance.
Kind of similar design space idea of being able to do a bit more with it.
Yeah,
And then that
100%.
feed into other skills and things like that as well.
100%.
There's a lot of room there to play with.
Yeah.
So we talked about Huntress being very, very combo heavy, and she has the deepest combo chains out of anyone so far, even exceeding like things you can do with Monk. You got 3-4 different skills deep of things you can start to synergize together. So how do you balance? How do you make that fun? Firstly, like rather than like onerous, for example.
Well, I mean, I guess there's a few things. Like one of them is it just has to be very readable and understandable when, like what you can do and when you can do it. And I think the other thing that's really to our advantage here is reusing skills in multiple ways, so you can make a deeper combo chain without requiring you to be using as many skills in order to do it. So the way that Whirling Slash and Tornadoes interact with ground effects and kind of like all that stuff sort of means that you're using Whirling Slash multiple times as part of the same combo chain. And that's an idea I think that I'd like to try and explore more, because I think that it is a cool way to kind of extend the combo chain. Yeah, as I said, without sort of getting too many things involved, and that makes it a lot cooler. So yeah, I'll think a bit more about how we can apply that to other classes and other skills. But it's worked out really well here.
Yeah, it's a bit of like a loose create your own combo system in a way. Like obviously there's intended combos, but because it's interacting with something that's fundamental like ground effects, you're able to combo with anything that creates a ground effect. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Like I added shocked ground to the backflip skill, or I got a companion pet that had a shocked ground aura.
Nice.
As like that was just there and that was available all the time.
I mean, it's funny as well because it also works on just enemy ground effects, and so sometimes you can just get a damage boost because the rare just happened to be dropping ground fire or something. So that's kind of fun.
The companion thing on the
but,
hunter
it's
seems
been
pretty cool. I think.
It's just a lot of fun to play. The first time I ran into that was actually in the graveyard where there's these like chests that like pop open with fire, and like I was using tornadoes, and then one of them just randomly turned into a fire tornado, and I'm like, oh, what happened there? Oh, yeah, sweet. It was just like a really cool moment where it just sort of interacted with the environment, which was really fun.
It always feels like you're getting a little bit of something extra for free when you're taking advantage of the enemy effects, or a boss fight that just has burning ground everywhere. It's like sweet. So how do you go about balancing though when you have a class that has deeper combos and kind of somewhat requires you to do a bit more versus a class or a skill or a build that is just bonk?
I mean, you have to ultimately make the combos matter, right? And I think actually that's one of those things that we're trying to really focus on with the balance changes we're doing in Dawn of the Hunt more generally, is making sure that even, like, I think it's the case where some of the combo gameplay kind of degenerates a little bit by end game in a way that, like, I want to make sure it still feels rewarded. And so we were sort of doing various checks, recently about, like as a random example, right? Like, so on the Mercenary, we found that doing, but when you get to endgame, doing armor break, what's it called? The armor piercing that causes armor break, followed with high velocity rounds, is just worse than just using high velocity rounds. And that's like really bad, right? Like we have to make sure that we're improving that stuff. So it's like sometimes you just get these things where like the balance by endgame kind of degenerates in a way that that doesn't support the combo anymore. And so we have to make sure that when we're looking at buffing things, that we're like making sure that when we're doing it, it's to support the fact that using more things is actually a good thing. We're really trying to make sure that we're bringing some of that.
It's interesting. You get penalized by actually doing a combo. It's more easy to do just a single movement or a single
So do you
action.
have like a baseline there of where like the really simplest build should be, the build that just bonks? Like,
I mean, you mean in terms of damage or in terms of like what it does? I mean, we always want.
I guess
you
the
be able to build
combo
combo.
should always do
have
more
to do a
damage.
combo.
I mean,
for
no.
people who don't want
Ultimately,
to,
you never have to, right? But it
Yeah.
sort of what it means is that you are sacrificing something. And look, the ideal situation is that like you don't feel like you have to do combos. You feel like you want to do combos,
Yes.
right? Like, because you feel rewarded for them. It's like
Well, it
feel
should
like
be
a fun-
rewarding, yeah.
Like, oh, I can add this. Like it's the feeling you should be getting.
Yeah,
Because it takes
I
more
think the
time as well,
Huntress
so
is
you're
doing that
at a
very
higher
well. Must
risk.
be like extremely high, because I don't think I've ever seen this like ranged melee combo done well before.
Right. Well, I mean, it does require a lot of discipline, and it means that a lot of skills like
Timing.
end up on the cutting room floor because you try them out and then you realize, well, if this is in the game, then that's the only thing I'm ever going to do.
Precision
So
and
you've got to be
timing.
really careful about that stuff. For
Certainly playing the Huntress now makes me go back and look at the other classes and be
Yes.
like, we need to up that
Yeah.
the level there, and we missed the mark a little bit now because this is better. And
Right.
who's to say
That's
the next
interesting.
class won't even be better and make us question even this? But
Sure.
you know,
but that's the way it is with class design.
that's
It's
what he
just
says when
always-
we like
Yeah.
literally when you make a new class, you question everything. He's
Right,
not
right.
understating the level of
yeah.
questioning everything.
That's good.
Yeah,
They're
do you see like going back to
perfectionists.
the monk at
That's
some
good.
point and
Those other
looking for more,
classes
like,
will become better.
opportunities to link skills together with
I mean,
combos
we
and
haven't we haven't got to the full skill set for any class yet already,
Yes,
and we need
true.
to add more pieces for
Because
a lot.
I think there's at least 4 skills that were designed and then aren't in the monk currently. Just
Yep,
you know,
range are the same. There
Yeah,
was
yeah.
extra poison skills. It was intended to be more chaos dots. There's all kinds of stuff. We have to obviously at some point fill all that in.
So we're
I'd
missing
say
the
when,
extra
but
ascendancies
we're
from
gonna try
the
and
monk,
incrementally
from
get
the
it, like, much like
ranger,
how
and
Race
from the
Spectre
sorceress.
I mean, the mount works with the
And I
huntress,
think
but
the
we were
third
like,
one
let's
from the
give
hunter
something
is
for the
missing as
ranger
well.
this time. Let's give something for the summoners out there this time, and so we're just going to keep filling in those gaps over time.
And it feels like you're getting better at class and skill design as you go too. So I imagine the last class you're going to release is going to be like amazing. You'll look back at the first ones and be like, ooh.
possibly.
Well, that is the worry, but whatever. That
but
just
look, with that just means we've got another round of going through everything and improving
Yeah.
stuff again, right? So
and that will never
course.
end.
That's it. So with the parry came the kind of looking at the player getting stunned, in particular player heavy stun. So
Yep.
it's always hard to tell players like, hey, we're going to do something to you and it's going to be a bad thing. You're not going to like this.
Well, the funny thing.
let's talk about why.
there's a few things like that actually, because so I mean, for a start, like we needed the downside of parry to be you know, like that. Yeah, you get stunned out of it. But then when we're looking at how long, like we're like, okay, right now, even and it's true with shield block as well. By the way, it's like if you get stunned out of that, the amount of time that you get stunned out for is actually not even enough time for most bosses to do a follow-up attack on you. And it's like, well, where's the downside if it doesn't even have enough time? So we did have to extend that out a little bit, and it makes you a little bit more careful. But in just to warn people, right? There's a few other things like we lowered what's it called, the I can't remember the name of that thing now. The thing that makes you more easy to be elemental statuses apply to you. Ailment threshold. That's right, ailment threshold. Yeah. So we lowered ailment threshold to actually make it so the player has those mechanics happen more to them, right? Because like right now through campaign, like you barely get frozen or burning or shocked, really, to be honest. So there's stuff like that we've had to do to kind of make sure that you know, that because if you don't have that stuff actually happen to you, then there's no point in mitigating it. And it's like, you know, things like charms were like not very useful because, you know, those mechanics weren't happening to you. There's stuff like that, right? The downsides do actually matter in order to make it so that, you know, that you then, you know, there's other things you can do to sort of bypass those downsides. So yeah, that's kind of one of those things that, you know, we just have to make sure is there.
I did always find it a little bit strange that like I was able to count the number of times I was frozen in the campaign on one finger.
For sure. for sure. But
And
yes,
it's always by those vile ghosts.
yes.
So
Wraiths.
expect a little bit more, a little bit more danger from the stun. I definitely died a couple times to getting heavy stun.
Yeah, it can
So
happen.
that's mostly occurring if you're like doing bad blocking or parrying. But
Yeah.
can it also occur just from like taking a really big hit or something?
Not- at least we've discussed that. We've gone through a whole bunch of different, like, should certain boss abilities heavy stun you, and if you speak into enough stun threshold, it like demotes it to a light stun, and if that, you know, there's all kinds of multi-hour discussions we've had, and we haven't really come to anything conclusive there. But
So they're really
it's
only covering
from,
K mechanics,
mount,
right?
raise
I
shield,
think-
and parry.
I really hope they also cover
and
some of
which,
the
you know, at least for all of them, you can see your stagger bar
thing,
filling up.
the structural issues that
it's worth
we've
noting
seen in
things
the
like
last 4
evasion
months.
apply
But
to-
so far, nothing.
So when you're parrying, we turn off your evasion from taking damage because
have to.
the block does, right? And otherwise you'd be like, I'm going to parry it. Oh, I evaded it. It didn't parry. But you can evade the stagger build up. So you don't take the damage anyway, just
So the
before
evasion
anyone
still
misunderstands
works.
that.
The evasion
Ah.
still works.
Yeah. okay,
So
I didn't
high
know that.
evasion will mean you can parry for longer. There's a bunch of parry stuff on the tree, including damage affecting the debuff, the duration of the debuff, so you get to benefit for it longer. Reducing stagger is all over the place for both mount and so in the dex section of the tree. So yeah, you can mitigate. I mean, my expectation is probably you'll get some in-game builds that are just like, I can parry forever and die. There's no real consequence. So. Not every skill can be parried, of course.
Yeah, it otherwise follows the slam rules. If it's a slam from above or below, you can't parry it. Much to your frustration for some things.
I mean, there are a few things where I've got disagreements about what looks like it's parryable, but
My hopeful there was when it's contentious, people would bring it up and would change it, right?
Sure.
So, like, if it's on the line, it's meant to be blockable. Like, if it isn't clear, and there was no way with hundreds of monsters and many dozens of bosses that we weren't going to miss some things.
So you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but action RPGs kind of naturally pull you towards one damage type, one skill, one specific thing, and optimizing as much as possible, because otherwise you're just making a bad build a lot of the time. But I notice Huntress has a bit of everything. She's got bleed, she's got all the elements, she's got physical. The only thing she doesn't have is like chaos, but there's kind of poison on the tree right there. So how do you like promote this, like all of this different stuff together? Are you supposed to only kind of be relegated to using 2 or 3 skills, or are these supposed to come together, and how do you manage that?
As
there's a few
expected,
things.
it's a
So
lot about
one of
their
them
new
is
class.
that we provide a lot of combos with the expectation that you'll probably be focusing around like a few specific things rather than necessarily using the whole tree.
Which is obviously
so,
understandable,
like,
because
the
they
other thing as well
obviously
is just making
wanna
sure that in the
sort
passive
of
tree, there's sort of options that
remarket
go
it,
across both.
so they're pushing
Huntress'
their
passive
new
tree has quite a
class
lot of
really
things
hard,
like,
which I understand. But
extra melee damage if you've done a
I
range
really
attack
hope
recently, and
I
it's
really
got
hope
things
that
like,
they still will
bonuses
address
against
some of
blinded enemies,
the
because while you're in a whirling slash, there's
some of the
sort of
some
stuff
of the
like that
more
where we're trying to carefully think
urgent
like
matters.
how can we come up with something that's interesting and buffs everything that you might want to be doing, that kind of synergizes with the stuff that that Huntress can do. But it is honestly hard because like many categories of things only matter for one thing, part of a combo. So it's just like trying to come up with categories that can somehow span all of them in different ways. And ideally we can achieve that, but yeah, it is pretty hard.
Generally, you're going to become more niche or more selective because, again, even mixing elemental and bleed is just probably often going to result
You
in something
probably wouldn't do
suboptimal.
both elemental and bleed. You'd probably choose one or the other. But that's why we kind of try to make sure that, like, so you've got sort of linkages between them though, right? Because it's like, for example, the thunderous leap detonates the spears that you do from the bleed thing. So it's like kind of like the idea there is to like it changes how that skill then has a use in the combo with the other one. So even if that skill itself isn't doing a lot of damage, it's triggering something that's taking advantage of all the damage bonuses you got for the for your bleed stuff. So that's kind of like the idea, is just to link all that stuff in a bit so that you can use the non like directly synergistic things in a kind of more synergistic way.
Yeah, that's if you didn't see that from the earlier trailer, it's you spear.
I'm curious if they're going to talk about the hunter for an hour.
But yeah, that's using an elemental skill like in another way as detonator.
I hope they cover
and
some
even
other
more.
stuff.
You've got weapon swaps as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's all those systems we already added about all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, what will be interesting is whether or not we miss something cross-class, right? That's always a concern. Is someone will come up with some way to abuse something, between something that's going on in the spear skills with some other class that we failed to consider.
Yeah, I mean, so that's it. When we look at a new class, we typically like call it like, Huntress is spears, but kind of not really. It's a signature weapon, but
absolutely.
Nothing in the Ascendancies prescribes spears.
Exactly. So effectively, we take great pains to make sure that the Ascendancies never mention weapon types, that they're always generalized. So, for example, the like infusion mechanic in the Amazon, it just says projectiles, it doesn't say spears, and the reason it does that is so that you could make an Amazon who is a bow user, and that's all fine. So like it's effectively like
Open-ended.
It's open-ended, and honestly, like I know that Mark does like. It makes the constraint a lot harder for how to design an Ascendancy class when you have to think about it that way, for sure.
Oh, it'd be much, much easier to just put a bunch of cool spear stuff in there, but now only really... I mean, it was similar to the original PoE 1 Saboteur, called out traps and mines, and so if you're a trap and mine character, what are you doing? Well, you could do something else, but no one else is playing that thing,
Right.
It isn't... it is easier to design. It is certainly less flexible and open as to what people can play in the different combinations and all that. So
How much do you have to consider the different weapons and the skills and how they interact together when you're originally designing them, or is there just literally so many possible combinations you're just like, the players will take care of that for us?
I mean, I think it is relatively impossible to come up with everything, but certainly we have to consider, like, is this going to be broken with anything else in particular? And there just has to be certain rules for things about, like, how easy is it to apply this debuff, how easy it is to consume this debuff.
So they must be
And even
testing
then,
this,
it's
right?
like,
They must be
make
beta
mistakes and have
testing
issues.
this
So,
before they basically release
when he
this.
says
I hope at
relatively
least.
impossible, it is actually
Actually.
But You know, I mean, yeah, I mean,
That's
just
relative.
but even just looking at the balance pass we're doing at the moment, right? I mean, there's hundreds of things like that, you know, that we still. I mean, there's things that we could never honestly understand all of the different broken things that could possibly exist, and so it's like it really does depend a lot on
I
you
just
know,
don't
like,
hope
on
that this
seeing
class will be
reports on what people are
uber,
doing on
like,
some level, right?
super overpowered
But then I
compared
think
to
that what will
the
happen
other
over
6
time is
classes,
obviously,
because
like,
that will
you know,
be
the
bad.
game's still relatively new. We're still making relatively big changes. Over time,
remember
the balance, I think, will get to the point where we no longer have these like crazy outliers.
I
to
remember
the
that
same
new
extent.
class being introduced to
And,
Diablo
it should
4. It
mean
was
that we get to
you
some
can
sort of
only
relative class
see
parity.
that new
By
class
parity, what
being
I mean
played
is, like, you know,
constantly. There
people
was no other
playing all
classes
the
being
different
played.
classes,
So.
Yeah.
rather than focusing only on a few.
They should have
as we
released
get
2
towards,
classes, in
full
my
release,
opinion.
because right now it's obviously very skewed, because you know there's certain broken things. So you know, yeah, the balance over time we'll get there.
It's one of the main goals and benefits of the early access is just
Yeah.
like let's get the balance of characters right.
Mhm.
And yeah, this patch release was always going to have 1,000 problems, or probably 10,000 problems. You know, the next one will have half that, the next one half that, and probably eventually it's going to be down to like here's only a few things going, you know, out of whack. There's
Okay.
always going to be something.
They're setting the
because
stage
we
that
add too
they
much
expect to have
content for it to
problems.
even be controlled.
So
Like again, there are too many uniques, too many supports, too many skills, and too many other changes for any amount of people. Like you're talking about a matter of you'd have to put in like thousands and thousands of hours internally to find it where, and then you give it to the players. There's so many people, it's going to take literally 5 minutes. So it is. It's very beneficial. And we're lucky in that regard that we get that level of testing and feedback, and on such a mass level, and especially you know with things like you know Ninja and all of that, and other people being able to see it and discuss it more openly, we're just going to be able to iterate on it even faster. But yeah, every single patch you're going to see a pretty substantial change in what's going to happen.
let's see. Let's
Thanks
hope
for making
it
broken
will not
builds.
break like it did last time, because
Well, 100%.
well, last week it broke.
I mean, you mentioned support gems. It's like over 100 support gems added just this patch. It's it's already like so many, and with you
And
doing
the
a different
December
weapon for
6
each
release
of
was
the,
obviously a
16
big mess.
classes
Yeah,
and
and there's going to be a lot
16
by the time we're
weapons.
done.
It-
But there kind of
it's
has to be, right?
all-
Because
I know, that's what you made it. You made this system that you need so many supports to support.
You
Because
do.
otherwise, it's not going to work. Like
Yeah, yeah.
especially with this one support system, it's like
It's quite
have
impressive,
done?
because I think
Well,
they
I mean,
currently have
that-
like
this is why we have
266
recommendations.
support gems,
Hopefully we can improve
215,
those as well, and
216.
continue to get
So
that
it's going to be
better.
300.
You know, like
50.
There's certainly
360.
room for the complexity to get a little
That's
bit
a
out
lot of
control here.
different
So the
support gems.
recommendeds are going to become more and more important.
Right.
So we need to make sure those are very much right.
for sure.
you must be looking to players even to find some of those recommendations down the line as well.
In some
like what-
cases,
yeah,
in some cases.
what stuff is popularly getting
But
used.
the thing with the recommendations though is that they can't really take into account what you've already got on the gem. So the recommendations have to be just sort of generally good, but not really take into account combos. You know that kind of means they're a bit more simple. Like the recommendations are going to be more simple than what you'd otherwise be doing if you're not
Feels
following.
like at some point you're going to need some sort of nested recommendation system. It's like, well, I'm kind of doing bleed stuff, so you go to the sub menu for bleed recommendations.
I'm less certain about that because I kind of don't want to get into the thing of actually telling you what your build should be. Yeah, that's a little bit different there.
Maybe like more sorting methods for the show me all the gems. Oh, there's a lot that are only in there that are never recommended, right? At this point,
There are, yes,
Yeah.
there are.
it's going to be an interesting challenge you guys have set yourselves to make enough supports there. So another thing that you managed to challenge that you set yourselves, and I always wonder, like, why did you do this to yourselves, was Spectres. So originally those were planned to be in for launch, but obviously Spectres are a whole can of worms. It's, hey, let's just give players access to every monster. Also, we've made so many new monsters.
Yeah.
We're talking about all the broken. There's going to be some broken in there, I promise you. And there's going to be some stuff we have to change.
I mean, they've done, but I mean, effectively, what the time between early access and this was like, okay, let's actually attempt at least to do a balance pass of this and like see if there's anything that's going to be a problem and then adjust numbers
Yeah, but now
accordingly.
you've got to account all those support gems on all those monsters.
Yes, well, this is an interesting thing,
Which-
isn't it?
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
The support gems work on them, and you know, like, what the hell is that going to do? Yeah, like, it's impossible to completely know, but yeah, like, look, I mean, there's probably definite, well, definitely some some dark secrets lying in what kind of Spectre mixed with support gems are going to do.
And monsters have skills now. It's not like PoE 1 where it's
Exactly.
like just a bunch of zombies just doing default attack. It's like everything pretty much has a skill now at this point. So,
But
Yeah,
you know,
it's
the
gonna
great
be
thing
cool.
about it is we got to leverage all that work again. For
Honestly,
the
that's
beast
one of the
taming as
reasons
well.
why I wanted to play The Witch in the
and of
first
course, the
place.
difference there is that you
So-
also get the mods from the thing that
Oh,
you
yeah.
tamed. So you know, that's going to be
auras, ground effects.
yeah, exactly.
On death explosions.
No, you've got a whole nother ruckus of potential interactions. So you know, we'll see what happens there.
We've done nice specific player versions of those things, for which specifically when you tame the beast, so that they're not sitting there spamming skills in your hideout and all of that.
Good. Yes. So
But also, like, there actually are player versions of the mods that Res can get, like, so that we can balance them if we need to.
Yeah.
Because some of that stuff would be ridiculous if you had it yourself. So you know, basically, we still have it sort of work. It mostly works the same way, but there will just be numbers tweaked to the player versions, and the same works as well for the what do you call it? The ritual sacrifice.
Headhunter, yeah.
Headhunter and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's player versions of the monster mods for that.
yeah, this new attention to these things is going to benefit like the pre-existing stuff like Headhunter and that as well. Yeah, that's insane.
There's a new... probably should let people discover it. There's a new unique
on.
charm that possesses you with a random Asmeri spirit as well, and so you get the daemons and the stats, and those technically also have player versions too, but actually not to necessarily make things worse, to make things better, because monsters are balanced to fight player life and monster life,
yeah.
not in the same universe. So actually what we've done is all the things you steal that are monsters and the monster skills, like the explosions and the summoning bears and all that, we've actually specifically balanced them way up to be more effective against monster. So when you steal them, they're much more powerful, actually. Just so they're not just tickling monsters and doing 1% of their life kind of thing.
It was mentioned in chat actually, the whole like Asmeri modifiers and things on stuff that wouldn't transfer over with the companion system, surely.
No.
That would be a little bit too far,
Yeah,
perhaps a
yeah.
bit unhinged.
We actually had to, because this is certainly a benefit. Once you have tamed the beast, it is not tradable. And people might immediately be like, oh, so that's sad. Well, the issue is, and as much as you might want some of that, I'm sure you don't want to be carrying around a whole bunch of tame beasts in your inventory all the time. So that every
Yeah.
single time you find a good rare, all of a sudden you have to go and...
Because the rumor that
flame
finding
it.
a rare would
God,
become a
yes.
thing. Yes, exactly.
It's actually
I
like
didn't
this
think about that.
annoying, in
Yeah.
order to make the most money, I have to be constantly thinking
Yeah.
about and carrying around tame
But then we
beasts
also
and-
made it so that as soon as you activate a beast, then no one who comes into the instance
Yeah,
after that
so
is
you-
allowed to
so you
tame it.
can't do
So
any,
you
like-
can't TFT the
Oh.
it's like a whole, like, there's like a lot of thinking
Oh
about that
my
stuff in order
God.
to make it so that, you know, yeah.
It's
No,
a sad thing to
yeah,
have
yeah.
to have lost, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not
yeah.
signing up
I
for
didn't
that.
even think about that.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
oh, the like needing for cheat sheets and
Yeah,
guides
exactly,
and stuff.
right.
Like,
And so you
which
have to be
beats are
really
worth the
careful. You have to be so
currency
careful.
this week.
And the thing is like, it's like we design this thing and then think, oh, trading beasts is going to be fun, but then you realize that the horrific reality
actually.
of what it will turn into. It's like, yeah, okay,
Oh,
well,
no.
you know. But yeah, at least we're thinking about that kind of thing, like with more experience that we have now early, so that we don't
We've
sort of
been
run
down
into
that
those
road
problems.
before.
Exactly.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
I'm glad we've learned from past
Yep.
issues with that sort of trading.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, talking about some of the other new skills, we had the addition of the rower, which was teased quite some time ago, I think.
Yes.
But you've got it in and working now, and it looks
Yes.
like it's moving around pretty good. and
Yes.
It's obviously you've got like a big downside. If you get knocked off at heavy stun and stuff, you can't use melee from it, so it's for ranged attacks.
Yeah.
But it does seem like one of those things that it's going to be like everyone's going to use or no one's going to use because it's a clear speed machine.
It is a concern. I mean, look, my ideal situation is that you're using it sometimes and not using it other times. Like, if you're using it like during clear, I think it will, you know, like you will definitely want to.
I'm not
but,
sure what they're talking about. I
it's-
missed it.
we want to just make sure that we've got, like, you know, sort of fun things like that. And like it's just a cool fantasy. Like, there's stuff like that I just want to get in. And it's like, you know, look, if it doesn't work later, if we have to nerf it, I mean, sure, I suppose. But, you know, like, I want something like that to exist. You know, we believe that it is balanced as much as we can.
You sound very convinced.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's balanced. It's balanced.
Well,
There you
as
go.
I said earlier, you can probably
Yeah.
get builds that get to the point of parrying indefinitely. So you can. That means in theory
Yeah.
you can probably get to the point of riding
Sure.
a rower indefinitely.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Again, enough evasion and enough
Yep.
stagger speccing into and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, fundamental question actually. Like, what's its move speed based on? Its own move speed?
The move speed is just your move speed. Like but it's
but
what
without the
you're,
penalty.
but what you don't get is the penalty for when you
of
attack.
course.
Yeah.
I think they're talking about the mount.
But it's funny though, because like even though it doesn't have a move speed bonus, it feels like you're motoring when you're using it, just because of the fact you don't get that downside anymore. Like you feel like the fastest thing on the planet.
It is
when you're doing
yeah, there are other like
they're talking about the
benefits like it's considered a companion, which is a kind of subclass of minion that we've added, where you can only have one of each one companion base is a keystone for another, but you can only have one of each type. So like you can have a tame beast and a rower with the keystone.
Oh right, yeah.
But inherently you can only have one companion.
Right, so you can't use a tamed beast if you're using the road.
And then there are heaps of passives for like if you have a companion, like companions while they're in your presence and all that kind of stuff. Heaps of that stuff around the bottom of the tree.
Yeah, I saw you guys remade the minion damage, just player damage node on the tree. It's you companion damage nodes become player damage nodes, and I was like, oh, that looks like I'm gonna take that.
Well, that's the like companion where it's like more the mercenary over to ranger huntress is more like you want your one powerful minion and benefiting that benefits you and you benefit it, and there's that like, synergy between you and your companions.
So since it is a companion, I like the idea of like balance wise maybe it ends up being that you're like map clearing on rollback and then you get to the boss and you dismount like old school mounted knights who charge into battle and then dismount and fight.
Yep.
So if it ends up like that seems like that would be a pretty cool balance for it.
that should be the best way to use it, I believe.
Yeah, because then you gain access to your dodge roll for the boss fight where you need it.
Yeah.
And does the rower then kind of do a bit when you're not on it?
It can attack, but I mean, it's not exactly a huge damage source or anything.
It's
like
certainly better to stay at ranged. It's not the most durable of birds, for sure.
But it acts as a distraction. Maybe there's some
I
support
mean, it's a
gems
minion, right? Like it
do
attacks
things with.
things and does stuff.
Yeah, you can support it with minion supports to make it more durable and all of that. So
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's
It's
there's
basically a
one like,
minion. That's
minion
cool.
takes 10% of the damage before you do. So sacrificial bird.
Yeah, true.
Poor little guy. So that sounds. I'm looking forward to playing around with that one then. Speaking of new content, 100 new uniques this time. So how many are you aiming for? Kind of in general, is this about really like filling that roster
Well,
out?
we want to have every base type have a unique for the purposes of chance.
outside of boss uniques.
Outside of boss uniques, we want every
on
base
top.
type to have to have a unique that you can chance. And
Yes,
so that
okay.
was the eventual goal. One of the things, of course, that we had that was sort of a problem in early access is that because of the way, because when we were designing uniques, we kind of designed them like in order from base type up, just literally because that's the way that like spreadsheets are arranged. It's like we ended up with all the low level uniques first, kind of before the higher ones, and it was kind of it's like we didn't see that mistake coming. Like it was kind of stupid because
we thought we'd get
we
through
thought
way
we'd get through
more
them all,
of
right? We were like,
so-
okay, we'll get all the uniques, and so we designed them all. It's like, okay, we'll start working on the art, just go down the list. So then we're like, oh crap, now we don't have very many in-game uniques. So this time we're like, okay, we really need to make sure that in-game uniques are a thing. There's way more of them. So the focus really is on making sure there's lots of cool stuff to find. Lots of really chase things that you can get. It's not.
Well, that we
you
can
discovered
actually
the
build
sword
builds
order
around
changing in the
uniques. That's going to be
does help.
needed because they're absolutely useless at the moment.
So effectively, like you should. This should be a lot better, and like there's lots of cool stuff there.
And we're just going to keep going with that, by the way.
of
Like,
course. Yeah.
100 now, 100 later, 100 next. Just keep going until.
But it's weird that
kind of honestly, we never really
a
stopped
rare-
making uniques. Like
A rare
for
weapon
sure,
is
anyone
better than any
familiar
of
with
the
Path of Exile
unique
1's
weapons
history
for
is every
most of the
single
classes at
expansion
this
since
point.
the
That's
dawn of
just
time has had new uniques
mind
added
blowing.
to it,
So I hope that's being addressed.
There's a lot there, and there's going to be a lot here eventually as well. So yeah.
So then let's talk about the idea of like players seeing a unique and be like, 1x, that's not very good. What do you guys want uniques to be in Path of Exile 2? Like, how powerful should they be? What should they be aiming to do? And how should they affect the rares in that slot?
I mean, there's always a tension because we want rares to still matter. Like, we don't want just your character to be just only full of uniques. So it really is like the role can evolve. So at the start of the game, they're really supposed to be more about that. So the earlier game uniques are supposed to do two things. One of them is when you find them, they should be powerful for a little while.
Yeah.
But then also they have a some kind of combo thing that you might be able to do with them at end game. But we don't always know exactly what that might be. Like, I mean, we've got sort of ideas, obviously, but it's like we don't necessarily design them to say, okay, this unique definitely has like an in-game build that's going to be actually
Okay,
strong
so
to
there
do with
is
it. And that's
objectives to
because you're
use
kind of
them
putting in things
in
where,
leveling or
you know,
campaign,
later
and
on,
there is
some other mechanic might come along or something might happen, and then people
end,
find an interesting interaction.
end game.
and
So
that's
they
when,
basically look
the
at
unique kind of comes
uniques
into its own.
at those two
And I mean, that's
different
the same
lenses.
as like Magic card design philosophy, that kind of stuff. You just put
So
in
that
like, kind of weird
actually
stuff
makes
and
sense.
Sort of, you know, maybe
Yeah.
you find something, but
it means that
obviously it can mean that, like, you
the
know, when people see
campaign
anything unique,
uniques
they
are
might,
probably
they dismiss
useless
it.
in endgame and
But
vice
then
versa.
One
so.
day they might also be paying vast amounts for it if it becomes a meta build. So you know, you could, but I feel like a game has to have that stuff in it in order to feel like there's lots of interesting ways
That's
to
weird.
experiment, because, like, you know, it's like the feeling
understand
of
it,
being
but
the
it's
first person to
weird.
discover some new interaction is an amazing thing, and then when people see something that like feels smart, and it's like, you know, like if we don't have uniques that just take chances and do weird shit, we'll never have that kind of stuff happen.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you know,
when we're designing a unique, we don't think about what's the value going to be.
Yeah.
We're not even coming out of it going like, this is going to be really expensive or this is going to be really cheap.
well, in
like,
some cases,
that's-
you know,
Well,
you
yeah,
knew
some,
you knew what you were doing with that Herald unique.
Nah, not, well, it's more of the charm and some, but that's the thing. Are you aiming for the? Honestly, there's someone said the other day.
I find this interesting because it discounts the value of uniques the way they approach
I
it.
agree.
Yeah.
For
So
the
what's
most
the
part,
use of it?
But not every unique should fill that role. Some should just be clearly, this is powerful, I want it for sure. It is going to be on my build.
Little chase.
And others are like, what can I do with this now? And then others are just like, we don't know if anyone's going to do anything with this. Throw it in. And sometimes it doesn't get anything happen with it for 3 years. But we don't know that necessarily. It's like, let's just take an experiment and throw it in there and let the players figure that out.
Yeah, I feel like you're with a lot of these.
Well,
uniques,
with the
you're
early
designing
access,
questions,
the
you're
experiment
just like,
failed because I
I'm gonna
don't think
put
there's a lot
something-
of
that's a
uniques
little
that are
weird.
successful
Maybe someone will
in
figure
any
that out.
builds.
Well, I think it's Rishi called
There's a
it. It's a
couple, but
puzzle
not a
piece,
lot.
right?
Yeah.
It's just a piece in the puzzle. You put it there, and maybe someone will complete the puzzle or half of it. Maybe not. And then others where it's just like, yeah, this is powerful. Like,
I mean, there are definitely some chase uniques in this. In this.
Yeah,
situation.
100%.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So on chase uniques, then we've obviously had some like pretty crazy ones so far. Where do they want to be in terms of like how hard they are to get for players? Because at that point, you do need to consider like how
So
expensive they end up being.
it's really tricky. So whenever we're looking, so if there's a unique that's broken, I guess there's two responses, right? One of them is make it rare enough that you only get the brokenness after the point when you're at the point where you're supposed to get that, right?
Yeah.
Which is to
But
say,
there's
like, you
only
know,
a couple
post,
in the current in
post-pinnacle
the
boss
current
type,
game that are really
like
broken.
level of character
Yes.
development, right? And then the other response would be nerf the actual unique. And
Like
it honestly is
260,
case by
and I think
case.
there's like maybe 5.
You know, so I think that like Temporalis, for example, actually got nerfed in both ways. The actual unique was nerfed a little bit, I believe, although I don't believe it's maybe as much as what players might expect. But then also you've got okay, whatever. But also we have made that one rarer.
It's
in
still
terms of being-
it's still pretty crazy.
Oh,
in
it's
the
still
right
crazy
sense,
for sure,
yes.
for sure. But the thing is like you want to chase stuff, right? So therefore you don't want to just go nerfing everything into the ground the moment that it's
Yeah.
good. So therefore that one becoming rarer, I think, was the right answer there, because it was way too common.
Yeah.
Due to the
We had also the issues with like I mean there were 3 real issues. One is darkness at one point bypassed honor loss. So all of a sudden a no-hit run, it wasn't a no-hit run.
Yeah.
You had guard bypass honor loss, so once again a no-hit run is not a no-hit run. And then there was just like, well, how can anything hit you if you can kill literally everything on your screen in 1 frame, right? So those 3 problems, and so as the balance issue of not everything surviving for more than 1 frame due to a subset of builds, and those other 2 things go away, it becomes a lot rarer in itself.
Yeah.
In that it is much harder to acquire, require like very specific and ideally high skill gameplay. And then there's just like, well, it also was just too common, the relic that yielded it.
I mean, the expectation was that, because this is a hard challenge, most of the time when people try, they will fail. But the reality is once you get the ability to do it, you just trade for that thing and get it every time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of meant that the
Printing.
rarity kind of didn't work like we thought. And, now that should be better in both ways.
Again, for the PoE 1 players comparison, like it was far more common than Original Sin. Which was the same role in PoE 1's version of the Sanctum, just to give us some sort of comparison.
It's just much easier to actually reliably do it.
And it shouldn't have been that much more common.
Right.
Yeah, gotcha. So crafting really surprised me. You guys announced, I thought we'd maybe get like one little thing, maybe you'd do something with essences or something, but we've got essences coming out a lot more. It looks like you've got because you're violent. You can
So
into
greater
now.
essences are going to be much easier to get. One thing we didn't mention in the video is that like omens are way more common because I believe you made the change. There's an omen in every
2.5 times more common, I think.
yeah than every thing. So like you've got stuff like that. Like we certainly knew that we needed to do more with what crafting stuff, and so we're kind of like, well, let's just make sure we're at least adding 3 or 4 things, like new things to. And,
Every ritual will now have at least one omen in the window.
Amazing.
So you can know upon finishing a ritual, you're like, what is the omen I'm going to
Okay,
get?
that's
And
good.
hope it's a good one. And
Love it.
Maybe most often it's not, but
But yeah, the greater essences, obviously, the Varlorb thing makes it much more common. There's more.
And I think
sources
you
of
can
them
get the
and
fractured
things like
orb.
that.
That's an
that'll be
interesting
happening
one.
more
Because you can
and then
look
of course
in.
there's the improvements to things like the runes. We've got higher level mods that you can get from them. There's like a ton more runes. There's like we just wanted to expand the set and having the kind of like the niche mods that you can get and craft onto things like it just needed more options. And it's sort of interesting because like some people say, oh, you don't have crafting in PoE 2 because we don't have a crafting bench, but it's like we actually have a huge number of crafting options, and the crafting being good kind of comes down to like how many of these kind of weird systems are there and how they can interact. But we just have to be really careful because you don't want to get to the point where ground items no longer matter. And I think PoE 1 kind of basically did get to that point for various reasons, where like people aren't caring about what's on the ground nearly as much. So we still want to make sure with every change we're making that they still use the ground.
So they want you to
stuff,
pick
they're
up
still
stuff.
excited for things on the ground, and so that's like a really careful balancing act because they do directly contravene each other. Like the better stuff you can craft, the less important the ground stuff is. So it's a really sort of subtle balancing act. But I think that the stuff we've added here will definitely push things in a way where you feel like there's more smart things that you can do to kind of improve your stuff.
Yeah, well, I think done right, and what you're doing is making sure that the ground items do matter with each of these crafting systems. So you had that fundamental change where you can't just turn an item back into a white item.
Exactly, and that's very important. One of the biggest ones, I think. And that kind of then unlocks the ability to do more. And so the great thing about the socketables as a crafting system is that they don't compromise the ground at all because they don't, they're on top of the stuff that you can get on the ground. So that's very good. But when it comes to the kind of the base mods, we do want to retain, that an item has. We do want to retain, for the most part, the kind of thing of like that part of the item generation is random. It's just that, it's just that on top of that, you get the more deterministic things that you can add in addition to. And then when you do it that way, it works really well. So socketables work really well as a crafting system for that reason.
Well, so on that topic, we've had this talking to you. It's like you're always saying to me that like this rune system is our crafting bench, but players don't keep asking for a bench anyway.
Right.
So obviously there's like a branding issue or a functionality gap.
So it is funny because I was actually saying the other day that like if we had literally had that system be identical, except that the way it was themed was that there's a crafting bench you go to and craft extra mods on the items, which literally be functionally the same, I think, and required materials that are effectively the runes that you get. Then I feel like people would be thinking that we've got a crafting bench. But yeah, ultimately that is that the rune system, the socketables are what replaced the crafting bench in the PoE 1 style crafting bench.
And I guess it must have also been like with that initial kind of output of them was just not as many options as
100% as well. So that is the issue, and that's because they were relatively late in development. So now we're just sort of expanding that, and we'll continue to add more socketables probably with every release, right? Like we'll add more categories of them, they'll do different things. It's like expanding the kind of type of mods because there is a thing where it's the more like in the base mod pool for items, there can only be things that are really fundamental, and so anything that's kind of out there, we don't want to put in the base mod pool because then you end up with this sort of situation where you get items and they've got random shit you don't care about. Like the crafting is where you want to have all of the kind of stuff that's like very build specific. And so adding more mods to that pool so that you can do that is the right idea.
Why is it that you can't socket and rune some things, like non-attack weapons, for example?
Well,
it was more just a choice for asymmetry where we just wanted these things to feel different. There was also just like a little bit of a like, in the future, we'll add some system where we can do something else there. And so just not having everything be completely identical. Much like how, the quality on those weapons works differently, where it affects the skill as opposed to just, base damage.
I do think it is something that we should be probably looking into sooner rather than later, though.
Yeah, because the asymmetry things, it's good to have like not everything be super homogeneous, but because we're talking about the importance of it being that extra layer of control over your items, which you just don't have if you're doing spellcaster.
Oh, maybe we'll add an Arcanist's bench and theme it that way for those
okay.
ones.
All right, you forced my hand. I have to bring this up now. Can we get some sort of like cohesive, all-in-one bench for disenchanting, salvaging, selling for gold, Arcanist benching at endgame. I get in the campaign having these things be separate, but I like at endgame, it's so much clicky.
You're not happy
work.
enough with them just being next to each other, putting them next to each other, and you
No,
Alright. Well, that's
no.
all right. I'll think about that one.
That's sensitive. Oi, oi, oi. That's
Planting the
sensitive.
seeds, at least.
Yeah. Okay.
That was not prepared.
Max, there's ways.
And Jonathan doesn't like it, so it seems.
Well, at least for endgame. Like,
Yeah, that's
I,
what
I do.
figured, yeah.
I don't want the world to not feel like it makes sense.
Absolutely.
So,
But
having it that you can just,
endgame,
like-
you've got your hideout where they're all
It would
like-
have to be a hideout related thing.
yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, people are putting their NPCs within each other's personal space anyway, so
Yeah.
the law goes out the window at that point.
For sure.
So we've also got Fractured, crafted via an orb from the cleansed
Mm-hmm.
monsters. How rare are those?
How do you quantify rarity like that? They drop from the monsters. I can't remember the exact number, but like I think I was kind of saying like 1 per biome, which is the kind of total blob of cleansed monsters. But then that obviously does get affected by things like pack size and all
Yep.
that on top of that.
Yeah.
So is that
and
like
then,
5 maps or something?
Well, it
Uh,
depends on how many of them you kill as corrupted.
yeah,
Because
so-
the ones you didn't
Yeah.
cleanse while you were getting to the nexus, those are the ones that then become cleansed. So you kind of have to choose, like when you go into a biome, am I going to beeline straight for the nexus and then cleanse everything, or am I going to just fight them all as corrupted to get the rewards from that? So you're kind of choosing one reward or the other based on what you decide to run.
Okay, so you can kind of leave the Nexus for last if you want to.
Yes, if you want to
use it to try and get more fractured orbs.
Well, you could-
oh no,
could-
it's the other way around.
way
So
around,
do,
yeah.
do Nexus first, then it cleanses all the maps,
Oh.
and then now you can get the most chance at fractured orbs, or you can fight them corrupted before going to the Nexus if you want to get the rewards that the.
So the
corrupted
fractured
maps do.
orb is
We have
interesting.
like for example, the corrupted bosses have their own uniques now.
Yeah, so you're gonna want that's
There's a
you're gonna
bunch
be
of
wanting
new
those.
modifiers and
Yeah.
how they, so there's like
Yeah, yeah.
random corrupted strongbox kind
Because
of
you can look
things
in a
and all that
modifier,
stuff. So
but you have to
you
get the
kinda really are
modifier
like,
on the
I'm
weapon
gonna,
first,
have a
so
look
that's
at
the
mods,
issue.
I like
Are
this. I'm gonna
there-
do this, then this, then this, then the Nexus.
So the
and then I'm gonna do
example
the rest cleansed.
earlier showed like
cleansed boss
levels
have
to
its
a
own
certain
units as well?
skill.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So you can
it
look it in,
does
that's good, but
have-
you...
It guarantees a fractured orb though. As
I
well.
think it's the challenge to get
Oh.
that
Yeah,
skill
it's
in the
the
first
So
place,
and
which
you'll
is still not
display if
addressed,
you
I
hover
think.
over the map and it says like contains I can't remember his name. Then you run it and kill it, you will get a fractured orb. So at least you will know that will drop one.
Yeah.
So with the fractured orbs being a way of fracturing, that's obviously super powerful for crafting. Are there any fractured items dropping pre-fractured? I quite liked that.
I think we went with no in the end.
Yeah,
we
not
were going to do
currently.
it, but then we decided not to. But we might do it later.
Yeah, so an extra add-on. Is there a particular reason for it or thought process for that?
There just kind of wasn't anything that really fit that exactly. I think
At some
the main
point,
thing.
you'll want some new thing to
Yeah,
go in
probably.
that, like this.
Probably.
This feels
Personally,
right
I
there.
would rather just drop more orbs. Honestly, and let people choose how they want to use them.
I like it from the perspective of dropped items matter. Like when you're
yeah,
seeing
but
a rare,
they kind
and
of
then you're
already
like,
do.
"Ooh."
They kind of do here anyway because
they do,
like
because you
because
use
you
it-
need that
yeah.
as the thing of the fracture.
makes
So it's
sense.
kind of not necessary. I think. Yeah.
There's other little subtle things, like for example, the cleansed monsters within cleansed maps can't drop equipment as a little thing. So they have much higher. Obviously, they're dropping things more like waystones, tablets, currency. They don't get to drop any of the armor or anything. So they're more like currency sources. As like an interesting
Yeah,
subtle
if you
thing
want
because
if you want more currency, then play cleansed maps.
you know.
So we're gonna have a lot more essences, a lot more omens, potentially ability to get fractured, recombination with the new, more accessible.
So we're an hour and a half
Design
in.
4.0.
No mention of
This is
performance
yes,
or
recombination,
quality of
certainly
life
undergone some
improvements.
changes. This is a huge leap forwards compared to 0.1's crafting.
For sure.
So was it just about that you had to establish that really like humble baseline for crafting, so that you could then go crazy with it like this?
Honestly, I mean, look, on some level, it can just be like you need an economy. You need to see how things evolve. We just don't want to do too much at once. I mean, although this may seem like quite a lot. I mean,
It does,
but the thing is like, but in terms of the initial system, it's like if we'd have had all that at the start,
Yeah.
I think that we wouldn't have been like, we'll put it this way: it is hard to take the stuff away. So that's why we have to be a little bit careful as we do this.
Yeah, I guess you needed to kind of assess the fundamental things like the no scours, the no
Yeah, 100%,
ults, and stuff like
100%.
that as well, because
Yeah.
then you can have a better idea of how to build off that, which I'm super excited for. Crafting.
But of
Yeah,
course, and if
actual
you know
crafting.
us, like more, there'll be more. There's always going to be more.
Oh yeah.
so.
Oh, you gotta have a new craft for every league, right? That's how it is these days.
Oh yes,
I expect a crafting system for every league. Thank
Yep,
you.
something like that.
That's somewhat actually our intention. So
yeah.
I love it. Love it. Perfect. So let's talk about Endgame then, because that had some humble origins as well with the initial implementation of PoE 2's Endgame. Obviously trying some new things, being a bit experimental, not necessarily just wanting to copy PoE 1's Endgame. But how far of your vision was 0.1's Endgame? Was it what you want?
I would say that the main problem that we had is there wasn't enough overlapping axes of randomness, as we call them, where effectively you need to have it so that when you go into a map, there's just chances for random shit occurring, and then that random shit like might happen alongside some other random shit, and then now the thing together is like a new scenario. So I mean, effectively,
Random
like
shit squared.
yeah, exactly, right. So let's like if you look at what we actually added here in terms of like encounters, if you will, whatever that means to you, like we've added kind of more than 40, probably something approaching 50 encounters, and that's if you count things like each rogue exile is a separate one, and each spirit's a different one, and things like that, right? So those are the things. But the big difference between the ones we had before and the ones we have now is that most of these ones can overlap with other things. So you have a situation where you've got the Asmeri Wisp that like happens to infect the unique boss of the area, and then that leads to a combat situation that you haven't had to deal with before, or then like you've got some essence thing that like or like, oh crap, that like this other wisp like caused the thing to turn into a boss that then it's just like it's all that stuff combining, or like what happens when this goes with a with a unique strongbox, and it's like all that combining stuff, and that's what leads to the situation where you've got an exponential explosion of like possible combat situations, and then sometimes you just run into stuff that you've never seen before because of that, because of this combined in some interesting way. And that's something that definitely PoE 1 has got very well, because it's got so many of these things that have been added over time, and it's also something that we took care to make sure that each league specifically did. So what PoE 2 lacked was, I think, that. And so that will mean, I think, that the end game is overall just much more engaging. Now, obviously, we're going to be adding more content and, more of the other stuff, but fundamentally, it's like it was specifically more of that type of stuff that we needed to do. And honestly, I don't think we've even got enough yet. Like, we want even more. We'll keep on adding that stuff, but it needed to become a focus. And I think part of the reason is that, when we're first working on the end game, it's like we need to come up with the big ticket items, right? Like what are the the league things and like the maps, and we need to come up with all that stuff. And so it's the little detaily kind of things that kind of a little bit require a bit more like time and stuff to work on. Even though they're actually like relatively efficient to make, like we can make a lot of them when we do actually sit down and design them, because they're like making a new strongbox. Like sure, it's like it's work, but it doesn't take like that long, if you know what I mean. But it is. But it is that stuff that really adds all the flavor and kind of interest. So we'll just be continuing to do that through the game. And I mean, even yesterday we were having a conversation about like making it so more of the maps, even just like regular maps, have more interesting just little things that happen in them and stuff like that. Like more like what the campaign has.
Love that.
So we haven't like got there yet, but like through early access, we'll definitely be just like introducing more of those little details everywhere, so that you get the interesting things happening.
Yeah, so a bit like those exploration mechanics in campaigns.
100%, yeah,
could be a
exactly.
thing
That's just we just want to make sure that you feel that same way through the end game as well.
And with the leagues as well.
Yeah.
And like there's really only so much randomness that can occur within a breach in a map, and so they will end up feeling ultra repetitive. Whereas and again in PoE 1 you had the boss that could spawn occasionally. You had 5 different factions. Things like that. And it is very much our intention to expand on all the leagues, to have way more random things occurring, mini bosses spawning, whatever else. I have a whole set. I don't want to spoil them all yet, because that's a whole later thing. But definitely want to expand on all that. Even Expedition only has the one boss. It had 4 in the predecessor. We need to get back to having all of that depth and
it rarely spawns the Expedition boss, which is very annoying.
It'll help hugely, while also making sure we're adding new ones, of course. But what we definitely have learned is that our minimum standard for new ones is going to it should include all of these things from the get-go.
Right.
Otherwise we're just signing ourselves up for like, here's 1,000 things we need to improve. It'd be nice to actually get some of them finished. So that's going to be a goal going forward for sure.
But I think it's like it is where our type of design shines, because like adding content is no longer a process of like, we work on a thing and then the players get to play, like it gets into a situation where like adding content has more value than just the content itself, because it adds to everything else too. And so that kind of makes it feel like the world gets like larger in much larger proportion than what you have. And so like, it's an n squared thing where like, the square of all the stuff we add. So that, like basically it'll feel like it's ramping up in terms of interest as we add more content, rather than just feeling like you're just continuing like rather than every league thing like you just add the same amount. It'll feel like it gets even bigger each time.
Yeah, like when you add Asmeri Wisps, that's not just about adding that. It interacts with all the other things that already exist that it can
exactly
go ahead and affect. So that's tackling one of the ultimately, I think, the biggest things is just that like the core basic mapping of running an empty map was boring, and that's never what you want to be, obviously.
Yeah, we need to get it.
So like some of the issues there, I guess, as well that were exacerbated by that problem was the fact that the maps were so big and that there were so many of them. Obviously, that's getting a lot better with the maps themselves becoming much more interesting. But it seems like this corruption and cleansing mechanic is breaking up and giving you something to progress through as you move towards the next tower or next boss or next other mechanic. I mean, I guess there's always something on your screen that you're pushing towards, it looks like.
Well, we want to try and like honestly, I don't even think we're even quite there yet. Like, we really want to make it so that you feel like there's lots of quests, as it were, in in-game, like not necessarily directly in the form of like here is a quest objective, but like that you sort of have this feeling of like there's like different stuff that you're like that you feel like there's a thing, you know, like exactly right. You need to ideally like every time you do one of those, it's like there's another one just on the horizon that you're thinking about. So if we can achieve that, then we'll have succeeded. But it'll need to keep adding stuff, right? Like just more and more things, because obviously you need to have enough just core there to be able to get to the point of it doesn't feel like you're just repeating the same thing over and over again as well.
It seemed like this like explorable world map thing that you did for Endgame, being like looking like a physical actual map, was really wanting us to explore, but that wasn't really much of that. So you kind of
well, I mean, ideally we can. It's just about content, really. At that point, you just need to add more and more, and we'll keep on adding more. And this
100% get more.
Yeah, and 0 to 0, I think, goes a long way to improving that for sure.
So with the corruption mechanic now, you're going to see some corruption on the map, and you're going to want to go there because it's a system that you can interact with.
Exactly,
And it's your skill points.
yes.
yes.
So you're unlocking skill points from that, which means you're unlocking more of the Atlas tree earlier on.
Your first Nexus, you have to run at a tier 1 map, and it will drop 2 skill points. It'll give you your first 2 skill points.
Awesome.
And then you're like, all right, where's my next Nexus? That's where I'm going for my next 2. And then your next one, and you have to do them 1 tier higher every time.
This sounds
second
good.
one, you do it tier 2 to get your skill points and so on and so forth.
It's not just grind 10 maps.
Yeah, that was terrible.
good. I love it.
They admitted at
It
least.
is
so
very
that's
much
good.
like, let's go and clear these corrupted Nexus. And then it's like, well, and there's the whole mechanic around it. But yeah, if you want to just like I want to get my points as fast as possible, just go Nexus to Nexus to Nexus and get as many as you can. If you're like, oh, I can't see any Nexus, maybe go to a tower to reveal more, and then, what you're doing way less frequently, mind you, thank goodness.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a lot more objective driven as opposed to just, again, random grind and random exploration. There's at least, and you should be seeing a pretty decent chunk of unique maps.
I was going to ask,
I call them
It's
unique
funny,
maps.
it's funny because I was pointing out to Matt the other day that the distinction between a unique map and a normal, like there is no distinction anymore. We shouldn't even look at that way. Like it should be that every map is like unique in some sense.
There's not a unique
You know,
map
there's not a
system.
unique
We have
map. Exactly.
we do have an icon for it because they are kind of in a different echelon.
Yeah.
But yes, technically, unique map is a name that's a holdover from PL1.
Yeah, because
and-
you can use mods with them with Waystones anyway,
these-
so it doesn't. There's no actual
True.
reason for a unique to be any different than a normal map.
You can craft
It's
it and
just-
enhance
it
it. and
really
juice
just it really just comes down to how rare they are relative to other things, right? So
And how rare are they? How like
I mean,
maybe
again,
in
so hard to
terms of
explain.
player screen.
yeah, I mean, look, as I said, I think
How many
that
screens?
How many? I had the numbers, I just don't remember them.
well, I mean, as I said, they should be common enough that you feel like there's always some kind of objective you're excited about on the screen, right?
Honestly, more common than I was initially comfortable with, and then after trying it, I was like, okay, actually, this is like, this is reasonable. So
Yeah, I feel like you initially probably want them to be common enough that you're like almost getting tired of those map layouts, so then you're incentivized to add more.
The good thing is, by the way, by adding more here, we didn't just keep them the same commonality as the 2 that existed.
Yeah.
Like they are just more common. It's not like part of the reason it wasn't as common before is because there was only 2, and that would have just been repetitive and boring. One of the other restrictions is that like the Vault of Kamasa was restricted to the Val City biome, so to speak, and that was one of the Citadel biomes. That's like one of the rarest and latest,
Yes.
So it's like we've not only made that more common within that biome, but a lot of the new ones, in fact, all of the new ones aren't restricted to those city biomes, and thus they are appearing more frequently. And some of them are like, oh, you want deserts because they give you the essence map, or you want the mountain because they can give you this and that, So like, ideally, there's a little bit of just like you see the edge of a desert, and you're like, oh my god, please.
Yes. Okay. So that's what I was going to say. This like idea of exploration is like I felt like there needed to be something biomes where like you're actually pushing into a biome because there's that one node that like affected your drops slightly, but obviously that's not much.
The one that was the Shattered Lakes, for example, as you can probably imagine, only spawns in the water biome. And so there's a little bit of like, and so does Untainted Paradise, and so does one other. So there are actually 3 special maps that can spawn only in the water. So go to the water.
And otherwise, how easy is it to find? You said there was an icon. Obviously, you kind of have an idea of what biomes. Is it like also something that's pretty visually
there's art there,
spottable on the map?
So the one we
looks
looked at with the
interesting.
one we looked at with the megaliths, which had all the storm and lightning. Well, on the map, it has a bunch of storm and lightning.
Cool.
So yes.
That's awesome. Cute. That's great. So we mentioned the Atlas passive tree, and you're seemingly, I think, you're getting better progression of that. But definitely an issue I had with it personally was that it felt very top heavy, both for the core one and also especially for the league mechanics, where like the league mechanics, you don't get points until you kill the bosses, which to me feels like the end of it for most players.
That kind of was the original pitch of that, and I wouldn't say that's really changing here, but there is more we want to do with that, and I think that it could be made better, but 020 isn't getting a change there to that side. But in terms of the actual core Atlas, it definitely is. You know, like you're getting that earlier. There's more. It's a bigger tree. There's more interesting stuff.
There's subtle changes to getting them in the sense that, like, for example, the difficulty 0 pinnacle bosses are way lower life.
Well, that's actually
now.
good. That's actually a very good point. So yes, difficulty 0 is now like half the life that it had before, and so that's like a pretty substantial
difficulty
change.
4 is currently the same,
Yeah.
as what it was before. So it's same top end, but like easy, more accessible for more people at the bottom end.
Right.
And then also because of like due to the reliquary key working the way it does, all pinnacle bosses can drop all uniques at all difficulties, except they are like substantially less common at difficulty 0, but you feel way less bad for running them at that point now.
Right.
So again, it's just opening that up to a lot more people to farm, and it's not so much dependent on if your build can't do difficulty 4, you're not really a viable character kind of mindset.
So much more easy onboarding for those.
Which will give you your first sets of points certainly a lot easier now. That being said, not if you're playing the most broken build of all time, because you're probably nerfed into the ground, let's be real. So with your new build, we'll have to see how that balance goes.
With their new broken build.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, one of those
Spectre builds,
specters.
yeah.
Anyway, the ultimate point being, you're certainly going to get those initial set of points easier than before. However, you are right that something isn't quite right there still, and I do need to kind of explore.
We are going to do more with this like later. We've talked about this issue, but we didn't have time to do anything about it in 020 as much. But certainly by the end of early access, I think that system will probably look quite different.
Part of it also, as we were talking about before, adding all those extra bits of content to the leagues, it'll help give more interest to the trees and more nodes we can add to actually invest into. Because if you think about a breach, there's only so much you can actually modify right now. Right, there's a level of radius, speed, density of monsters, and like there's the standard stuff with monsters, but like you can only go so far when you don't have all of that depth of different factions and different bosses and different mini bosses and different itemizations or additional things with catalysts and whatnot. Like you are quite limited in how expansive a tree can be, and so it'd be nice to get those things in and also kind of look at the trees at the same time and reevaluate how that works, just so we can have them be more interesting while we're at it.
Right.
But yeah.
And now with the pinnacle bosses, if you're like halfway through a level, you don't need to. Maybe I'll do that when I get the rest of the level now.
Yes, that was a good change. So yeah, as he was saying, as you were saying, you no longer gain experience or lose experience anymore from pinnacles, so you could just feel free to do them anytime. I think that's just a straight up upgrade, and I think that it's not like you were playing pinnacle bosses for experience.
No.
So it does the downside is not an issue really.
It also is the nice thing of really just keeping, like, if we add more leagues, for example, and we end up with a Domain of Timeless Conflict problem, where it's just like rotations to max level, like ultra
Yes, we
quick.
don't want that type of content to be the way you level.
Now we can say maps are the way you level, like that is what you're doing. And sure, you might get some sort of unique map rotation here, and maybe not. I don't know. It depends. But hopefully we can avoid that. But either way, like it's just really you're playing in maps to level, and that's what you're doing.
It's
and there's
not,
something
that's not
nice about
itemized
that.
content, right?
At least until we've added Delve.
Well, sure. I mean, there will be future parallel in-game systems.
Confirmed.
Right? Like,
I know you want to do something with Delve.
yes.
You're a fan. I mean, you made the end game look like Delve, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been a long-term problem, and one we need to properly apply to the other game as well. That the whole like not can't do my content because I got a level, and I'm like, even if you're only like 15% in, you're like, oh,
Yeah. It's just not as bad.
Yeah.
It's just not as bad in PoE1 because the leveling is faster.
Yeah, it's
so
true.
it hasn't been on our radar as much.
So speaking of like map progression, there's been some fundamental changes there. You're telling me that now you can no longer drop maps below your current level of map.
It's correct. So yes, you no longer get if you're playing a T5 map, you're only going to get T5 maps, or if there's a boss there, a T6 map. But we've also smoothed the way the whole progression works. So we've actually the map drops are way less random now entirely. When you kill the last rare in a map, that has a it can affect it. At T1, that was a 100% chance to drop another map of the same tier. And then as you go up the tiers, you can still sustain that using Waystone chance. So effectively, it's de-randomized that a lot. And then the way there are several ways that you can get upgrades. So in terms of like going up the tiers. So one of them is that when you kill a boss, that's a guaranteed +1 upgrade. Then of course you can still cube them up, 3-to-1 recipe to go up a level, or you can run it corrupted. And if you're running a corrupted map, then because it drops the same tier, that's like a sort of guaranteed. When I say corrupted, I mean the one that
Varlorb corrupting up
+1. That lets you do the run them the same level as well. So you've kind of got those three options, but it's much more intentional now. It's like if you're going up maps, it's like you're deciding, okay, this is a thing I am doing. You don't just kind of have that like it doesn't just happen. So it's kind of supposed to make the jump like. If you're just looking to sustain, you can do that, pretty much guaranteed. And unless you're dying more than the number of times you've got portals, which is obviously the thing now. Now that you can go through portals again, the sustain is going to be a lot easier if you are dying. But then it's like once you've achieved that, it's like okay, you effectively can sustain forever. Like the cases where people just drop off the bottom and have issues should be like way less common.
Ultimately, it's way less random, way more deterministic. And ultimately, you can, as long as you are able to do the not die all the time, you will sustain that tier forever.
Right.
Assuming you can roll enough, a high enough mod count, and there is a boss here. I'm going to go up a tier.
Yeah.
And you go for the boss, you kill the boss, you go up a tier.
And if you
and then you sustain that tier forever as long as you can do the difficulty. It's
and
just very clean.
And if you're adding more mods, which you do need to be doing to continue to maintain 100% ability to go up tiers, then and if you're doing that early, you're getting more maps than what other people are getting, which means you can do the cubing as well. Like it's just kind of like it just much more effectively gets the thing where good players can advance at the right speed, normal players don't fall off the bottom of the curve. It kind of solves all of those issues without, but also you're not going to have just like hordes of low level waystones that you don't need as well. So
and just no, it does. There are still you can get to the highest tiers relatively quickly. You have to prove you're good enough, your character's good enough, but if you're doing it, you get there, right? It's pretty quick, and you can take it at your own leisure as well, and that's completely fine. So it's not like, oh, we've made it way longer to get to tier 15. Like, none of that is really the case. It's just that before you could luck into getting to tier 15 quickly, with some level of, biasing the luck, of course. Or you could just be like, what the heck, I'm like constantly running out and have a really bad time.
Right.
And so now it's just way, way more like predictable, and honestly, it probably has way more of an impact on the sustain problem, which we didn't really, which we talked about, which is the respawning. I would argue this thing has like way, way, way more impact on map sustain than the respawning does. I mean, obviously, if they're paired, then they relate.
You need both
but,
because because the guaranteed drop comes from the final rare. So if you were just dying, you would never get it. So the respawning is necessary in order to make it so that that's going to happen for players who and obviously as it gets more difficult, and you get less portals, you start to get to the point where you're going to run into trouble. But if you're a good player, you should be able to get up into the top and sustain very well.
Yep.
You mentioned the idea of maps dropping magic by default.
Yes.
Is that something you're still doing, or?
I believe it is. But no, actually, wait. But there wasn't a concern about that, which I wanted to talk to you about later.
Maybe not.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later because the concern was raised that I think is valid. So we were going to make it so that maps drop magic and above, but there might be issues. So we'll discuss that later on.
Well,
non-decided.
Yeah,
undecided. Yeah.
Undecided. Yeah.
You thought it was decided.
Got a week left.
Yeah, we've got a week left. It's fine.
Still figuring. It sounds like much more deterministic progression if you're able to prove the power that you have.
That's the main thing.
It just should be, am I strong enough to do this? Yes, I can do it.
Right.
Not, am I lucky enough to do this, and am I strong enough to do this?
Great.
One of those axes, get out of here.
Love it. So we've got rogue exiles populating the maps now. How common are these guys, especially with unique, since you get their unique guaranteed? I love that. The whole...
It's 1 in 8%, 1 in 12.5 to start with, but of course Atlas tree be Atlas tree. So you can spec into that. And
Is there like a map modifier for that or something to guarantee it? Or something
there
like that?
are. I think in this case, this one is the exception, whereas you can get normally guaranteed of the other things. We wanted the exiles to be one that you can't just guarantee all the time.
They don't always have uniques.
Yeah.
But when they do, they're using them. The AI is very cool, like how it works.
I mean, they can have 0, 1, 2. I mean, there's nothing stopping them from having uniques in every slot.
What?
But like, it is.
There's a chance that that would be.
It is
incredibly low.
absurdly rare.
I assume it's just roll per slot, basically, right?
Yeah, it is
roll per slot.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
But
So
you
we're talking
might have
like
a line of just
fraction of a fraction of a percent
Yeah,
for like
exactly.
all of them, but still like 5 or something like that. Yeah.
it can happen.
But they have quite a lot, like because they're a player. The assumption is that their other gear is also relatively good, so they do generally drop. More biased towards dropping higher tier rares and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so.
they're doing that like full set of items because you've killed a player.
Yep.
Cool, I like that. I always love that little thing. And I feel like it's even more important here in PoE2, so that's awesome. But just some of those will be unique, maybe.
We wanted them to be less common than the other content, but like way more exhilarating when you find them.
Yeah.
But of course, again, you can speak into them at the cost of other things. That's your choice.
Cool. Is there going to be some sort of like warning that they're coming, or are you going to know they're in the map ahead of time, or are you just going to get ambushed by these guys? Leaf from off
You
screen?
won't know they're in the map ahead of time, much like anything random you run into.
But they talk though, and they'll say something before
They monologue before they murder
They
you.
do.
Don't know if I'd go to quite the level of
Again,
monologue.
when I said
but
some,
sure.
when I said some insult you, I'm not joking. Like some do literally insult you, and I believe one of the monks is a pacifist, and he's like, I don't want to do this. Don't force my hand. He'll do it anyway. But,
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just. You're just like running away.
Yeah,
He's like,
exactly.
don't make me
Don't
do
force my
this."
hand. Yeah, exactly.
but look, you can just run away. You know. I really like the here's an occasional spike in difficulty, and again, it's important that they are relatively rare for that reason as well. But I do want it to be when you find one, you are very excited to kill it, and of course, even though they portal out, you still have your number of portals you have. So unless you're running like a full 6 modded Waystone, just get back in there, and he's gone, or whatever, you've lost your uniques or non-uniques, whatever they had, but either way, just move on, you know.
I mean, you guys were somewhat forgiving with this. You didn't make it so that they take your items.
Yes, that would have been good.
That's an event. At some
Don't
point,
give me that
perhaps.
idea.
That's maybe a 1 week event or something in the future.
It'd be
You know,
pretty
so
easy to do.
just take one of your items, and then you got a nemesis system where you can find them and try and get it back in the future.
And you had the Tame Rogue Exile gem.
I know tame's the right word.
Higher
exile.
You run up and you can quickly be like, take $1 million gold.
Just give him a little snack. Like, yeah, you want to follow me?
I mean, to be fair, that would be a fun system.
It actually would. That's actually not a bad
Running
idea.
up and just being like, hey, I'm here, give me 100,000 gold and I'll be your ally. Is kind of,
I know you've
Come
tinkered with the idea of a hireling system at points
Yeah,
in the
well,
past, so now you've got your mercenary hireling system, right? Rogue Exiles. They recruit the one with good uniques.
We'll see. We'll see.
Going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
So we did have some League mechanics come over from Path of Exile 1 to Path of Exile 2. You're going to be looking to port more over. Are you going to be doing some unique ones that we haven't seen before?
I mean, we're definitely going to be doing more unique ones that are, that are just completely different outside of what we've done in PoE 1. Absolutely. But I mean, I think that like sort of the hope in the long term is that each, as we kind of get, past the end of early access, and as we're sort of, just going out, that each time we do something, we're both adding a completely new League mechanic, but also potentially bring something back as well, kind of like as another additional kind of like, here's another fun thing. So that's probably sort of what I imagine will happen. But it kind of really is case by case. Like some things we don't want to bring back, some things we do, like, and my opinion can change on a dime as well. Like if someone suggests like a new way to interpret something, then I might be like, oh, actually that is great. So, it honestly, people assume that we have a full plan of literally everything, but it's like in reality, it's like it's very much responsive to like what's happening, and like the actual plan relates to the things that are like are definitely happening, right? You're talking acts, you're talking classes, you're talking like all that stuff is like definitely like that's happening. It takes a long time to produce. It sort of happens in the background. You've got outsources, armies of people kind of working on that stuff, and then all the kind of like more incidentally stuff is very much like, oh, let's do something cool, let's just make this, what if we do this, and we don't have a, I don't have a plan for the next 12 strong boxes. It's just just come up with an idea, and that's cool. Just a fun little project for a designer to work on.
How do you feel like some of the ones that were, I felt somewhat definitively Path of Exile 1 in terms of clear speed, like Breach, for example, have settled into PoE 2? Do you feel like they're in a good spot, or were they a good idea to bring over to the game?
Look, I think Breach is. I mean, look, Breach is fun, right? I certainly wouldn't want to remove it. I don't know about there's probably been some balance changes.
I mean, it was spawning too many.
It has.
monsters,
Yeah,
let's just say that without a doubt.
It's much better now to PoE 2 standards. Yeah.
It's currently on PoE 2, it's just too out of control. It just needs to chill.
Right.
There was a little bit of an assumption made where it was just like, well, you'll get overwhelmed by monsters and it's more a matter of survive as long as you can. And then, of course, because you get self-propagating herald builds that are just literally can kill anything.
Which, by the
in
way,
every
heralds
direction.
don't self-propagate anymore.
Just get that out of the way.
Just get that out of the way right now.
The power of the characters kind of
yeah.
distorted the league balance in a way where it's like we have to make some changes. So yes, like it's coming down a bit.
I think we saw that one coming.
Yeah, well, 100%. I mean, look, there's a lot of things that people will say they saw coming, but it certainly does end up being the case that like the patch notes are. So by the way, we aren't releasing them at the end of this live stream. We're going to be releasing them next week, but they are going to feel like a bit of a nerf fest for sure, because there's a lot of things that needed to get.
Let's talk balance.
Yeah. All right.
My
Settle
expectations and anticipations are that this first one is going to be an absolute wrecking ball of chaos and carnage, and see where things land.
Yeah.
But then maybe over time it'll become a sledgehammer, and then like a fine carpenter hammer.
Sure, that definitely should be the case.
As I said earlier, it's like 10,000 things will change this time. 5,000 things will change next time. Then hopefully we can halve it every single time.
People should really be going in with the expectation that like nothing they knew about how the game was balanced before is the same. Just forget everything you know. Exactly. So basically we'll that kind of just means that everyone who's finding builds do it again. Like you are going to find more shit that is like outrageously broken again, but it is not going to be the same shit that was broken before. Yeah.
Attribute stacking, get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. yeah. So I mean, it's the hope is though that yes, you're right. It'll stabilize to the point, it will take time, but we will get to the point where we no longer have things that are easy to become outrageous with. Right, like the idea is it shouldn't be that you can just slap a combination of supports together and then you're just destroying pinnacles in 14 seconds. It should be that.
14's a long time.
Yeah, okay, sure. But
you mean 14? That sounds like terrible.
Yeah,
exactly. That's not even on PoE.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying is with no items, right? But anyway, so the point is that the first time you fight a pinnacle, it should be a bit of a fight. But then of course you do get back to the ability after when continuing to expand, continue to develop your character post pinnacle to the point of being able to annihilate them in seconds.
Yeah.
But it's just that has to be earned. It can't just be that just a combination of supports that you can get trivially will do that.
Or a common unique, and then that's it.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, but it can be. But but if you get Temporalis, it's now, now you've got some shit going on. But it really has to be that there is an economic factor involved in becoming ridiculous.
Yes.
And so it's when that's not the case that we have a problem that we need to hit shit with a big giant balance sledgehammer.
Yeah. So originally I was going to come in and ask about all the specific things, but we can just assume that it's not going to be chaos. So I like the idea instead of focusing on kind of your core. What are you aiming for? What are your goals? What are your metrics? So we talked about this idea of having a number of damage / how fast you kill a pinnacle boss.
Yeah,
that you're aiming for, and then how much players can exceed that, and you're good job.
Yeah. So it really should be that you're not killing, as I said, not killing pinnacle bosses that fast at the moment. A good sort of benchmark for just a guy walks in and has kind of got something that's not stupid, but also not doing something not crazy. And we kind of imagine that they should have about 50k DPS doing something like that. But at the same time, anything up to 500k DPS is
10 times
is also okay. And that'll take you from taking a 3-minute fight down to a 20-second fight. That's your range of potentially acceptable kind of things going on. But if you're doing above that, then you're in we're probably going to nerf you territory at some point. So that's kind of the thing. Now, it's worth mentioning that like we've lowered like the life of pinnacle bosses to get that to be right and sort of things like the difference between a T15 boss and a pinnacle boss was just way too much. So that has been that's been sorted out. Like it's things like that we just need to sort of get things in the right place here. So that's a sort of expectation. Now, obviously, people are going to still find ways to get 10 million DPS somehow, I'm sure, even though we're like nerfing many things. But the thing I think that when we're talking about nerfs and how we want to do, my key thing that I want to try and achieve always is that whenever we're nerfing something, we're only nerfing the thing that was particularly like we're nerfing as little as possible to make it so that the average Joe who works in and just tries to do stuff is not getting affected by it.
Yeah.
Like it should only be the like ridiculously broken synergy thing that kind of like has some way of dealing with it that's actually affected by this. And I'm struggling to think of an example off the top of my head. Maybe you've got some of like, you know, a way that a targeted nerf that kind of like...
I mean, like say lightning conduit, you're not going to reduce the base damage of it because someone's able to hit for 150 million with one hit from it. Like that comes from the compounding like top end levels of exposure, stacking, conductivity, and more so shock effect, right? So it's more about like take away from the shock effect scaling side of things there and increase the base damage even, you know, like do changes like that where it's like for an average person it's now better, and for someone who is absolutely abusing's not the right word because like they're doing the right thing technically by their standards, that are using all those extreme factors, you know, bring those down a little bit, keep those regulated, and like it'll increase the average user's experience while narrowing, you know, bringing this down and bringing this ideally up a little bit in a lot of cases.
I like the idea that I felt it's somewhat reassuring to hear that there was actually kind of like a math here. Like ultimately you're saying bosses have X amount of hit points. It has 500k hit points, and so we expect players around 50. Yes. Right. So that's a clear number. Like we know that. Oh yeah, and we're okay with you killing that like 10 times faster than we expect.
Right.
But it's when you get it down to 1 second.
Exactly.
Then we're
10,
like,
10 times is fine, right?
And the problem with the more DPS you have, it is now I have to dodge less.
Yeah.
I get more crowd control.
There's a snowball.
You know, it is. It really is. So you're always going to be incentivized to do that, and you get to this weird thing where now it's just like, okay, well, I think you after a while was like, I haven't actually seen a pinnacle boss fight that lasted more than 2 seconds.
That was really sad to me. Probably the saddest thing about the early access launch to me was seeing the first pinnacle boss fight, and it just like, and it's like, oh, you know, like it's like nobody had to care about the mechanics. The first time
I gave it so many skills.
Exactly, right? Like there were so many skills and all these things, and it's like none of it mattered. It's like that's sad.
Yeah.
So yeah, we ideally was in a situation. Now I hope that doesn't happen again, but honestly, it's probably wishful thinking.
As I said,
yeah.
10,000 things before, there's still going to be.
Yeah, there's still going to be more, and it will
thousand.
happen every time, and people will find stuff.
Look, this again, by the end of early access, I want to say we're going to be in a real fucking good spot with this, in a way that is not going to have so much abusive stuff, and getting rid of that whole I feel like I have to play X. Like,
it is that
very
100%
demoralizing to players when they played their thing and all of a sudden something comes out and they're like, oh.
And so the way you will know that we're successful is because you get more diversity in classes. Because it means that there's no longer the thing that everyone has to play because it's easy to be successful.
I mean, you definitely saw that where it's like the comments of any build guide, it's like, oh, another Archmage build. Oh,
exactly.
Oh, it's just Heralds again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't even a build, this is just Herald again.
You go look at like, what are all crossbow people playing? And crossbows is actually the least used weapon type. And so you specifically start there and you're like, okay, well, here's a bunch of people using these skills. Oh, Hand of Wisdom in action, Hand of Wisdom in action, Hand of Wisdom. Okay, well, never mind. The crossbows are relevant, right?
Yeah. Even without stat stacking, still better than
and it's like, okay, well, you know, obviously take some away from there, and then it's like, okay, well, what are you left with? Well, you're still left with probably crossbows are bad. So what do you have to do? And it's like, you know, crossbows now, for example, just a quick change is like, instead of using one-handed damage mods for added damage, they use two-handed and their base damage. And then all the skills now have a higher growth per level because they scale with other external factors like attack speed less because they have the reload time. So they will be getting more damage per level, whereas before, most skills were very consistently growing per level. So almost every spell would get the same amount of damage per level regardless of everything else it had. And this is how you got things like Spark just being the dominant skill, you know, out of control, because it scales not only that, it scales obviously the number of projectiles kind of out of control, and with projectile and duration and other multiplicative scaling factors, you'll end up with just like, well, of course I'm just going to spark everywhere. And so now it's like, well,
Spark has these other multiplicative things, so it should get less damage per level. And this was in PoE 1 and was the right answer, and we somehow didn't replicate that exact thing that we did.
Yeah, everything
So-
just had the same damage growth.
Yes, we end up with exactly the same. So now every single skill we're looking at it and going, you're going to scale more, you're going to scale less, you're going to scale more on the damage axis because they have other things that scale.
And this just means that, like, when you're asking, well, what skills have changed? Well, the answer is literally all of them. Like,
Yes.
no skill will have the same damage as before. It's like a complete, a complete rebalance of the whole thing.
Expectation-wise, it means that any skill that didn't have a lot of things you could do for it will get more damage. 'Cause that's
Yeah,
what it
that
does.
should be the case. But I mean, even as well, like when we're looking at things like, I sort of mentioned it vaguely before, but like I'm trying to make sure, like we are trying to make sure that like the combos that work early game still work late game, which is kind of another important element of that too.
Yeah. So crossbow's been buffed a lot, and I also heard the other thing that was definitely getting a lot of buffs is Warrior as well.
I mean, we'll see how that looks. I mean,
everything
yeah.
up and everything down.
Yeah.
It's so hard to even
yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so hard to have like a cohesive message with the single like this class is better.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I mean, it's easy for mercenary skills or for crossbow skills because
Yeah.
I can look at those numbers and just be like, okay, everything's clearly higher.
Yeah.
But then in others, it's like it's
Well,
it's
that's
too
the thing
easy
with
to
Warrior.
say.
Is like
yeah.
Warrior was like in many cases there was a lot of things that it was actually not bad.
Yeah.
Like it was good in many ways.
But then it didn't have anything that was outrageously broken like how the other classes did. in
yeah,
the same
and it
way.
didn't gel with all players in many ways as well.
I mean, we've also done balance changes on literally every ascendancy class as well.
Yep.
You know,
Chaos.
Pathfinder has like 2 extra notables and some changes. You've got a new notable on Chronomancer. You've got a changes to like Chrono was way too much utility stuff. Like where's just my like good thing, So like you got like a good
Where's my
thing.
bonk node?
Yeah, less niche, more something. And then we've just done that on every single class. We've upped a lot of the undertaken or bad things, and we've downed a lot of the really good, powerful things that were over the top. So
this is why we've gone back to the more conventional patch note cycle of a couple days beforehand, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely.
Like, if they were ready, you would have them. They're not ready because we're not finished, right? Like, and giving someone half the balance changes doesn't allow them to even make educated decisions on what they're
doesn't
going to
help
play.
you.
So it's
or
just
them.
completely pointless at that
So
point. Yeah,
we'd rather give you everything all at once instead of just some like here's
But even once you have the patch notes, like don't even be under the mistaken illusion that you'll be somehow able to determine what the best builds are from that. Like this, because it's such a big difference.
It's hard to take things into context because you can look at it and say, oh, okay, so like this thing got buffed, but this thing got nerfed. It's like, okay, but you're linking just 2 things. You're not linking all of the other things. that
Yeah,
go into it.
exactly. So
Yeah.
it's
You're,
very
We'll try though. We'll try.
Yeah, sure. Give it a shot. Do your best.
Look, when the game released, you had to learn everything. You just might have to do it again and again. Every single patch every major patch after this, you're going to have less and less of that, and your familiarity will be able to come in and be useful. So at least from a balance perspective at this point, like it's not like we've structurally changed the campaign and all that. So you have still a lot of information and knowledge that is going to help you play the game better anyway on your second. I mean, a lot of people maybe made multiple characters, but for a lot of people this might just be their second character.
Yeah.
So they're certainly going to be more equipped. And we've had the races, so you've been able to see how the best people play.
Oh yeah. There's definitely some good tips to learn from there. Oh yeah. That lever skip with the portal, oof, beautiful. It's my favorite. On the slightly bigger picture as well, like life and armor versus energy shields. Are you happy with kind of where either of those are at, or what do you kind of hope to achieve with them?
Energy shield certainly. I mean, primarily due to Grim Feast. And like mana stacking being a little bit out of control that's been too strong on more the inside of defense for sure. Expect some pretty drastic changes there. As for armor, well, it's one of those like accuracy kind of things, right? Where it's like or dexterity and like where it's like honestly our next point with that is honestly just to get in a room and just be like, all right, let's pretend it didn't exist and we were coming up with the game from scratch and we're like, okay, we have strength. What would we want the ideal defense to be? And honestly, it might even extend further than that. And really just see, firstly, to make sure we end up, if we don't end up at the same point, make sure we end up as better. Maybe we do end up at the same point and we do just go, okay, here are some other changes that we need to make around physical damage in particular or something like that. But it's one of those things where at this point we just need to like review it from literally back to basics and see where we end up. Because it might be something completely different, but like it might also end up being relatively the same, and maybe it was the better answer. But either way, it's worth the discussion and worth the time because, it's. I wouldn't say we're happy with it, and I wouldn't say we're necessarily like all the way unhappy with it. But it's there's something not quite right going on for sure.
You're still fundamentally questioning some of these things and willing to go back to the drawing board on them, which is quite interesting.
Well, 100%.
And this is the time to do it.
We drastically changed how evasion works, and I would say it's for the better, and we should be exploring that with everything. And, so we just need to do that process still. That being said, as we make things more like the shield block better, as we buff the ascendancies or nerf them in on the other defensive arcs, things like armor will become better. But again, it's not quite right, but I don't have enough information to say, where it will look, what it will look like in the future. So.
Yeah, okay, cool. So let's talk about recovery as well, because that's another big thing. I remember early on ExileCon discussions about the importance of limited recovery in making combat matter, so that you could have situations where you're attritioned or where like the hit that you took matters for the next hit that you take, and just back up the full. But it's pretty good in boss fights, honestly. I feel like recovery is somewhat limited. That still happens a bit, but certainly in clearing, you have access to tons of recovery with cannibalism and things like that.
It's certainly out of control, and it's a little bit of, again, partly due to the fact that kill speed and clear speed just was way higher than we had expected and what we balanced around. And because if we were balancing around what people are currently doing with the upper echelons of builds, you'd have to have effectively every average player and average build just can be completely, it would be useless for them. Now, there are ways around. I'm not going to say that there aren't little bits changed here and there, but it's more about, we've really made sure to just, it's kind of hard to say exactly what we've done because, again, this is probably a thing we're going to have to look at next time because there are so many changes that it is hard to even, understand how this is going to fit into
Once
all
the
of that
dust
now.
clears, you might be able to see how recovery's looking.
100%, we're at the point where we do need a little bit of all right, we need another round of testing for this because... and again, I'm going to stress it is actually impossible for the amount of changes for us internally to be able to be certain or test all of this.
Yeah, but the vision is still that idea of like more stricter recovery or less powerful recovery than what.
Well, it shouldn't certainly be like here's one little piece and now it's fully solved, right? Like having heaps of recovery should be something you can achieve, but it should require a decent amount of investment or high tier itemization, right? Like. For sure, it should be possible. It just shouldn't be trivial.
Yeah. So, and on that note, then, for like vision, what's your vision of what Path of Exile 2 is supposed to be? Because I think some people are still like unsure about, is it supposed to be just kind of more like Path of Exile 1, a faster game, or is it supposed to be a slower game, a much more different thing? Like, this is a hard thing to communicate, but it gets asked a lot, and I feel like people are still a bit unsure.
It's funny though because like once again, it's not. I don't view it as just a pure speed question. It's about like, is the combat engaging and fun?
Yeah.
And also, are you getting to the point where you never get to engage with bosses? Like if you're never if the first time you fight a boss, you just destroy it without seeing any of its mechanics, then that's a problem. And it doesn't really say anything about the pace of combat. Like if you look at some of the Huntress stuff we've got there, like it's incredibly fast paced when it comes to like dashing around and stuff, but you still have to engage with things, and that's the key element for us. So, like obviously players want to get ridiculously powerful, and we still want to let them get ridiculously powerful. It just has to be earned. It has to be, like after a certain point. And like after you, like once you have finished your character, once you've sort of done everything, then you should be just like like crazy and like beyond the point of any of all reason. It's just that you have to earn it, you have to get there, right? And like that's the power growth thing. That's like it's really hard to sort of just like smoothen that out across the whole game, but like that's ultimately the goal, right? You have to kind of get to the point of like that you constantly feel you're getting stronger. You always feel like the next, like, oh, I got this and now I'm better and now I'm better and now I'm better, and you keep on going, and you have to scale that all the way to the end, because the moment that you get to the point where you're just trivializing everything too early, it's like, well, the rest of the game just becomes boring after that point, right? It has to be that there's the level of that you still have to get.
And so kind of based on that earlier discussions about like damage and boss time to kill and things like that, it sounds like the time where you want that to be starting to taper off, like the players can start to cheat that a bit, is after they've done pinnacle bosses.
Well, you should feel that way multiple times throughout the game. but then later you still then get to a new level of challenge that
You
still
find
requires you
something
to
else.
engage again. Like if we're doing our job correctly, it's like you reach a point of feeling like you're a god, and then you're like, oh shit, but there's new god-like shit above me that then makes me have to then
Now
do
I have to find the uber gods.
exactly right. So you have to keep on with that train. And it's actually really hard to take you back from feeling like, oh, I'm all powerful back down to like I'm feeling, and so you have to kind of get that in there as you go
want that
up.
Dragon Ball anime arc.
Yeah,
where
for sure,
there's,
right?
There's always a new level of Super
yeah,
Saiyan
exactly,
after the previous one.
exactly, right. That's what you have to be able to do, and so yeah, it's just smoothly taking you up that power level curve, all the way to the end.
Yeah, so I think like when it comes down to things like movement speed when clearing, it's about like if you're able to just ignore everything because you're moving so
Yeah,
fast.
exactly. If you're able to ignore everything, then you obviously you will move really fast. If you're not able to ignore everything, suddenly your clear speed is like not as big of a thing. So long as there are still things that are challenging you, as long as you reach the next tier and like everything's harder again, then you're good.
I feel like a point of the difficulty here between the communication of this with you guys and some of the people in the community is that I feel like you're not really looking at it in terms of PoE 1 versus 2. You're just trying to answer that question specifically.
Yeah.
So it's not really about like it being like PoE 1 or 2.
Exactly, right? It's just about making the combat good.
It's either the combat is fun or it isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of spectrum of stuff there, but I would say that you want to be able to engage with the boss. You want to be able to fight its mechanics and do its skills, and you want to feel like you can overcome those over time and get better. And you want to engage with monsters, and yeah, there's probably some people who are like, no, I don't. I want to just press a button and loot drops on the ground, and I don't have to look or do anything. And
Well, so that's an interesting point. Is there's this let's say the quote unquote mythical average build is are they able to switch their brain off and watch Netflix on a second monitor only if they're doing like maps 3 levels under what they should be doing or something, or should that be able to happen at kind of like
once,
where they're at normally,
once you're at your tier of godhood,
Yeah,
for
but
that.
I actually want to address that because, like, okay, so I'm watching. Well, okay, right now I'm watching Deep Space Nine, funnily enough, but I'm watching Deep Space Nine as I'm playing, as I'm testing the game, right? It's like you develop a muscle memory, and that muscle memory can include using multiple skills and doing like multiple things, and that's still to me more engaging than just holding down a button, you know?
So you're saying this like watching things on the secondary thing isn't about the game being easy; it's just a skill issue. You need to get
I wouldn't say that. I'm just saying that your muscle memory can develop from more than just using a single skill. You just and we've always sort of said that there's this thing where like, okay, sometimes you pause the show, right? Sometimes that happens because you come to a thing that's
this is an update to the classic, second
I
monitor.
love how
Netflix.
this friggin' watching something on the second screen has become such a
I
fundamental
know
part
it's just,
of the...
it's just the community's just grabbed it and it's become a thing forever. But
Well,
it's been updated now. Like this is the update. You want
Well,
you want them to have to pause
It was
sometimes.
a philosophy set for a
because
different
I feel like
game,
I've said that 10 years ago about how like sometimes you get the spike in difficulty.
It'll
Like, oh
haunt you
shit,
forever.
like now you have to do this. But yeah, I guess that turns into pause the video at this point. But yeah, but no, but look, if I play this way as well, right? Like it's not like I'm, like once you get to a certain point, it's like obviously you're going to want to, the music, you've heard it lots of times, like you want to have something else going on. That's fine. But I still think that there needs to be
Debatable.
the ability to have. To have something engaging from time to time that you have to deal with. So yeah.
It's always been a bit of a silly thing because you've got so much element of choose your own difficulty in Path of Exile, right? Like
Exactly.
do harder maps, do easy maps.
But look, people always want to choose the hardest stuff, right? So therefore, that's what they're judging it against.
That's true, you
And
do
so
have to
that's why
account
you
for that.
do need a level of economic gating to make it so that, like, you can't go too far with difficulty without, without having to prove the economic stuff on some level, so that you can.
Yeah, you're dying
So
and losing the map.
Exactly, you're dying and losing the map. That we have to think. Like all that map sustain stuff is so tricky for that reason. Like getting that exactly right.
Well, it sounds like some big advancements in that regards. So I've got some kind of random tail questions here. Are you planning in the future on, I don't think it's probably happening this time around, but on changing campaign pacing at all? Like, I feel like some of the zones are probably a bit too large and a bit too empty.
I mean, that's more about adding more stuff to them than it is about making them smaller.
Yeah.
Like, there's still a lot more events in campaign that we haven't added yet that
Yep.
still need doing. There's like big lists of things that we never got time to do, so we'll keep on getting to those. and do
The
them.
argument there, which I do believe in, is an area should be able to be large if it has enough interesting things. The
Right.
frequency of interesting things is high or
I mean,
consistent.
like the size of an area is completely right. Like imagine there were no load screens. You just walked from place to place. Like you wouldn't be thinking about area size exactly. It's just, is the density of interest enough? You know, like the fact that there happens to be a load screen between one place and the other is not really the relevant
long
element.
is directly proportional to interesting.
Yeah, exactly, right? So
It's more about
to me,
running back
One thing
to
we
stuff
do need
that you
to
already
obviously
passed.
do, and we have done in some areas, is just making sure that if it is a large area, it's not just interesting things to find as well. It's also making sure there's enough monster variety that way it's not just so repetitive. Like
exactly.
Yeah, where you've got like almost different biomes. In
there
some
are
areas.
some where I would say the area is large enough, or you're in there long enough such that there isn't enough monster variance, and so it gets a bit repetitive.
But yeah, it's completely true. Anytime someone says, "Oh, this area is too large," I'm like, "Well, okay. So what monsters are we changing? What events are we adding? That kind of stuff, right? Because that's the way that you change it around. Like there are areas that are very large that no one complains about because they're stuff.
They got
fine.
they got a lot
There's
of things
also
and
like
stuff
there are good. I don't know how many people are gonna play this or how many people stop playing before 011, but like it's worth noting again. Like areas have like the fast travel thing now as well to
It's certainly a big
between
help.
checkpoints and there's some of that stuff which I'm hoping again when people start playing from scratch they get to see a lot of the improvements we did before as well and see how they feel about it again.
Worth mentioning through campaign, we've got both the wisps and there's also strong boxes as well through campaign. Like they feel a little bit different. There's just as you play through, you're certainly finding some things you wouldn't have
Shrines
last time.
soon.
Couple more
Shrines,
ones.
yeah.
Oh, what's it?
Shrines.
Oh,
We'll have them actually in the campaign soon.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think art wasn't quite done right or something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it might be a bit weird. The ones in the end game, it works a little bit better narratively, but using that asset throughout the campaign, it would feel real random. So it's just a matter of as soon as the art's done, we'll be chucking those in as well.
Oh, great. So that could be after release.
It'll certainly be shortly after.
But also like every time we do like that we're expecting people to play through again, like we'll probably tweak like which content spawns in different areas and just like fiddle around a bit so that then you play it just feels a bit fresh and things are going on there.
Yeah, you kind of got me there. I feel like each of the zones I'm trying to think of that like feel like they're way too big is like they're also just coincidentally empty.
Yes.
So I guess that is maybe perhaps more an
it's
issue.
it's the exact same problem happens in maps, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that, like the
exact
boring
same
empty
Yeah.
map.
When the maps when people say the map's too big, just not.
I think I
content.
think I phrased it to Jonathan yesterday when we were talking about it as every screen looks the same as every other screen. It wouldn't matter where I'm standing in the map. It would look.
I think the map you were talking about was Step. Like we were looking at Step and
yes.
being like, okay, well, what's actually like?
It's a big square.
Yeah, and there's nothing going on in it. And even if there was stuff going on, I mean, like it's funny because like it took us a little while to even come to an understanding of like what needed to change there. Because I'm sort of saying like, okay, well, like and it's very random. So it's like, do you find the cold plains in D2 as to be a boring area because it's ultimately kind of similar? But the answer is, well, there's buildings sometimes, and you get like, there's just like there's just a little more going on in that way. So like we need to make sure that maps feel that way too when we're doing them.
There has been a few pervasive crashes and issues like that.
Oh
So
god,
how's
yes.
that going?
Well, I'll tell you what, the entire engine team have basically been entirely focused on that for 3 months, and it's been horrible because. So I mean, it's kind of a long story, and I don't know if I should go into all of it, but ultimately, the issue is that on NVIDIA cards, the remaining issue at least is that on NVIDIA cards, if you're using a driver that's bigger than I think 560 point something, like basically after that point, the game crashes, and if you install an older driver than that, it doesn't. If the crash happens in the driver in the GPU, NVIDIA is just like not really much help, and so it's like just trying to nail down what even caused it. It's just so hard when it's like, and the thing that sucks about it is like it won't reproduce on anywhere except production and alpha, and like the moment you look at it, like we can't reproduce it anymore, and yet for some people it happens all the time, and it's just like it's so horrible. And like what we've done, we actually come up with a somewhat ridiculous idea that was now implementing, which we're going into 020 with, by the way, which is that, and this will seem stupid, but like, how about we just don't crash? Which
you tell me about this.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what we do is, what we're now changing it to is that if the GPU driver crashes, what we do is we create a new device and then upload all the textures to that. The game is paused while this is happening, and then it unpauses, and then the game keeps going. And so that is what we're doing to solve this crash. And it's like it's kind of ridiculous that this has to be the solution, because like it's just mysteriously in the NVIDIA driver we have and we have tried to find a workaround for this. It is just like so difficult. So that in 020 that's what will happen. And so
while we're here, like, do the players have a workaround? Like,
Well,
just
they
to get you
yeah,
done, like-
you can install the driver earlier than.
Sure. What
than
about
560.
what about the Vulcan? Does that matter? Is it-
Yes. Well, but no, not entirely. It does still happen in Vulcan, but it's a bit unclear about that particular thing about whether or not that's less. But
I figured it might be
no,
a good
it
opportunity
is
if there is a workaround to tell
in
people.
it is in the driver. But I mean, yeah, like if you install an older driver, it will go away. Like
So all of this time, when people have been saying the classic armchair developer meme, it was like, why don't you just add a bit of code that says if crash equals false?
yeah, well, something like
It
that.
works.
Basically do the engineering
They
to
were
allow
right.
us to just recreate the entire GPU context,
don't
and then there you go,
crash.
and then don't crash, and that is actually the
Amazing.
solution we're now going with. But it's like the thing is, the other one that sucked though was that stupid damn full system freeze. Because I'll tell you what, if the entire system freezes, there is just nothing you can do to find out what the hell caused it. Because there's no like
report.
crash report, there's no logging, there's no literally nothing, right? And it's like that happened. That happened when the Windows November H2 update shipped, and then things just started mysteriously freezing. And my God, that was hard to track down. And you ask Microsoft about it, and they're like, "Oh, we'll look into it," and it's like nothing happens. It's like Jesus Christ, guys! Like it's so annoying.
I can feel your frustration
Yes,
is
it's
palpable.
incredibly frustrating because it's like we want nothing better than to fix this shit. So that one was fixed. Like there was some spinlock implementation that like. I don't have any understanding of why it causes this to happen, but we tweaked it a bit, and now it doesn't happen anymore. And it's like there's no rational reason why this should cause the
that's
operating system
frustrating.
to freeze. And it's like there's not even a good answer at the end. There's not even like, oh, here's what was wrong. It's just like this random particular sequence of operations being done causes your entire system to freeze for no reason after this Windows update. And it's like, well, cool. Like what do you do about that? Like it's just terrible. And so yeah, that one sucked. But basically now, I mean, it's funny because we've fixed so many crashes that weren't the crash. So like general stability,
other crash
apart
is
from that
fixed.
crash, is incredibly
like
good now.
99%
Yeah,
down,
like-
maybe probably
And it's like,
99.99%.
and it's like,
less, yeah.
the thing is, we'll fix a crash, and we'll be like, oh, maybe this is the crash, and then it fixes like 2% of crashes, and you're like, well, that wasn't the crash, but at least it looks good to fix, right? Like, it's so annoying. But as I said, we have a workaround now.
That's good.
That will basically recreate the graphics device if
So you might get a
if it crashes.
pause and then
you'll get a pause
unpause.
for 3 seconds and then like roughly depending on
sounds like
hardware,
a
and then it will
good
continue
improvement.
and the game will pause at the
Yeah, no, I
thing.
obviously just make it clear we don't want it to remain like that. Obviously,
Yes. Obviously, we'll still try and fix it, but at least it means you're not crashing, and you're certainly not freezing anymore. That's sorted out.
Yeah.
And then we found another one recently, which was like, okay, so this is another stupid one, right? Like, so anyway, so there's that whole like Intel CPU issue, like on 13th and 14th generation Intel CPUs, where like there's some freaking voltage regulation problem that causes CPUs to break in a certain way, and if that happens, then like the thing that will break is that like the decompressor will like it'll decompress something and like one bit of it will be wrong, like literally one bit in there, and then it fails like a hash check, and then that just causes the game to crash. And so the fix, like it's like things like that will happen as well. Like you've got stuff like that, and it's like, well, once again, it's like it is our problem. We have to fix it because it's affecting real users. But like the solution to stuff like that, is just so annoying to find. And so yeah. Anyway.
It sounds like
Yeah.
you've improved a lot of the unrelated crashes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you've come up with a good workaround at least.
Yeah,
now
at
for
least
that one.
hopefully, but yeah,
So that
anyway.
sounds like a massive improvement. But I
Yeah.
also just think your obvious frustration is very validating for people who have been frustrated with this.
Exactly, but the thing that's the most annoying about it is that like all these the engine team who are spending time fixing this, they're not able to spend time working on performance issues, which is something else that we need to be obviously improving over time. So there's been a few performance improvements, but like not nearly the number we would have had if we had all 7 of those people
Yeah, tied up with
like
this.
like working on performance improvements.
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
that's been the most frustrating thing about it.
Crashes first. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
100%. But it's like when they're kind of
We have been chipping away at some decent ones though. I mean,
Yeah, no, we have, yeah,
we
those
got
different
some
improvements. Yeah, yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
good performance problems resolved.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, there was
they
that
were,
ice one that was really bad,
Yeah.
and there was things like that. So like the worst offenders
Nice.
we're certainly fixing, but and like I have no doubt by the time we get each time we do a new release, it'll be even better.
Yep.
Great.
But and yeah, by the time we get a full release, I'm sure it'll be like very good.
And I mean, speaking of, I know it's like tangential sort of as well. Obviously, with we had a lot of woes around the release, but we've done a whole lot of back-end engineering work to make it.
Yes,
you know, the launch
yes.
is-
So the launch should go smoother as far as like you know.
I mean, it was pretty
technical
good.
Stuff. It was.
Wow, it still
But-
was 5 hours of
Yeah,
not
yeah.
good.
Yeah, but like 5 hours compared
No,
to
no, no, no.
like,
This time,
days.
this time. I mean,
is
look,
the
I'm
industry standard.
I'm tempting fate here, but like we've made significant improvements to the ability for the realm to handle stuff. So,
5 minutes this time.
well, I mean, we'll see, right? You never know what's going to go
You
wrong,
always
but it should
sometimes
be
get
much
caught
better.
out by something random. and-
Yeah, but
so-
it should be much better this time.
Good luck with it.
Yeah.
I hope you get enough players to stress your theory. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
true.
always the good thing to aim for. We'll just run up with a couple of the random kind of chat questions before we finish up today. Any possibility of Ascendancy respecs? Is that something you've considered, especially with all the changes going on?
We're sort of not in love with it. Like, it's just one of those things where, like, I feel like it's key to the identity of the character, and like respecing, like, the journey of the character, like, it does get pretty significantly compromised if you allow for that. But I know Mark is especially strongly feeling about it.
I mean, the answer is going to be the exact same as last time, which is like, I don't know exactly, or I don't know how to articulate exactly why I feel so strongly about this, and so do a lot of the team members. Of like, again, it's just that your choices should matter, and you know, it's obviously something that I was okay with in PoE 1, and so there is probably a world where I will be okay, but there's got to be some level of work involved to achieve it that isn't to just pay a little bit of gold and then you're done or whatever. Like, I want to find a way to do it if we're going to do it in a way that is like grounded
That's
and
interesting idea.
and difficult to well, not I wouldn't say difficult, but like requires some actual work to do. So that would be the compromise I'd certainly be willing to explore, which I have been thinking about recently, because I know every single time we come to an expansion, it's going to come
Yes.
up. So
The trial of respecting or something.
yeah, there'll be something where your character has to undergo some sort of challenge or something to do it. And I know you could argue, well, doing the trial is that, and you're
Gotta
not
make some
entirely wrong, but
sacrifices.
something a bit more.
Sacrifice a few animals,
I'm
few thousand
sure-
enemies.
I'm sure we'll have a conclusive decision, or at least a level of articulation one way or the other by the end of early access.
Alright.
But for now,
I'll ask you then.
yeah, it's just going to take me a bit more time to figure out what I want to do there.
Is dynamic switching between keyboard and mouse and controller coming at all?
It's not in 020, but it will be coming.
It's on its way.
Yes, so
Work-
like,
being
and
worked
I'm
on.
really hoping by 030, like we should be able to get that. That is a very key feature.
It seems like it's going to be hard to loot juiced maps with only one portal. Oh no, well, this question has already been answered. Well, actually no, because there's
No,
still one
this-
portal.
No, this is a concern,
that's
and we
true,
have to do
with
something
juice,
about
so
it.
we have to
Yes,
figure
we
it
have
out,
to figure it out.
My
Yeah.
bad,
So
yeah.
in the next week, we will actually be looking into this one.
There's a few problems around
point.
it
Yeah.
still that other things to come up, like
Yep.
you know, you also don't want it to be that if you did use your one portal, because it's your portal that's used, not everyone's portal that's used. Because when it says
That's actually
one
a good point.
portal,
Yeah, it's a
that's
good point.
one
We didn't
portal
I think we
for
mentioned
up
that.
to 6 players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when it's 6 portals, it's 6 portals for up to 6 players, which means technically it's 36 entries and exits out of the map, right? And like that changes things in a way where it's like when it's down to 1, it's like you don't want it to be that, oh, I failed the map. Quick, Ziggy, come join my party, get in here and finish it for me. You know, you don't want to kind of have that style of play happening. So there is still some things we need to figure out with this, because it's going to promote some what I would probably classify as degenerate behavior, as well as the fact that you're probably like, oh, my inventory's full, zone out. Oh, what the? Okay, sweet. And sure, you can add a warning, but I don't know if even restricting it to just one inventory of loot like that is good, right? I would personally prefer that it's one death, not one, entry. So there's some stuff we need to figure out, but again, Jonathan and I need to talk about that and actually solve that. So
That's interesting, yeah, because the death seems like the important part. So as long as it's not like a way to cheat it, it seems like almost like you'd want to allow people to come and go as they please until they die, right?
Yep, which is a potential solution.
Yeah.
But again, can't
Something
say
to-
for sure. But yeah, 100%. That person is right for bringing that up, and
is
it
a
is
real
on our
issue.
radar for this coming week to have, or weekend as well, to have a solution for.
Yeah. So with this new league not having a specific like league mechanic, is it still a challenge league? Does it still have challenges?
It's actually
No,
I
there's
didn't think
there's no
so.
achievements or challenges
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, yeah. I'm
This-
pretty
these
sure
is-
we weren't going to do that for a little bit yet.
These
but
are, there's not really, maybe later in early access, but for now, not really.
Yeah.
We're just trying to keep it more about
Make
the
the
game
game.
and the mechanics, and less about
Make the game first.
the achievements. And the achievements will certainly, an achievement system and stuff like that will certainly be there with the full release, and we'll reintegrate all of that at the time.
Is there any plans for stash tab expansions, like for example, rune storage?
Oh, 100%.
Especially with a lot more runes.
Right now, I'm actually trying to at least add the affinity without adding a custom tab.
Oh,
Those
good.
two things appeared from the implementation standpoint, so
Yeah.
I want to try and divorce them so we can have affinities without
We
it.
Oh, yeah.
wanted to get those in this patch, but unfortunately they just
Yeah.
didn't quite make it.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, it's actually quite likely to come in sometime,
It's-
like in a point release after
Yeah.
like within the 0 to 0.
As soon as the patch is
Yeah,
out
yeah.
and stable and we're
Yeah,
on
yeah,
top
yeah,
of things, it's going to be like, all right, we need to get all those like UX or quality of life
yeah.
things that we blatantly missed out on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think
for
like-
example, like being able to add bookmarks to your atlas and
Yep,
write
that's,
the name.
that is one
That
that
is
we,
something
we
we are-
designed some stuff for it. We just haven't got
Yeah,
it yet.
cool.
I want to say it's like 80% implemented right now.
yeah, yeah. So,
So we-
it'll be soon as we can. We'll get that in there.
All right, that is excellent. And on that note, we'll wrap things up today. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you so much, Mark.
No problem.
Well,
Thank you
thank
very much
you.
for coming.
And thank everyone
Love
for
it. Thanks for
watching.
having me here. Great time. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm Ziggy D, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
See you.
Okay. Wow. So that's interesting. Turning off the sound for a bit. So that was 2 hours and 45 minutes. That was actually much longer than I expected it to be. So I'll give a quick recap. So basically they're introducing this new class, the Hunter class, which is obviously was already announced with two, the way I understand it, two ascendancies. An ascendancy called the Amazon, an ascendancy which I didn't capture the name of, but it's focused more on chaos damage. So that's gonna be interesting. The interesting thing about the Hunter class is gonna be a mix between melee and ranged, which is obviously the spear. So you can actually use the spear as a melee weapon, but you can throw it at enemies as well. So that's pretty cool. The other three classes that are getting ascendancies are the warrior, which is going to be a blacksmith focused ascendancy. It looked pretty cool. The mercenary, which is called a tactician, and then the witch, which I think was called the lich, but I'm not 100% sure. It was something like the lich. The interesting thing about the witch is that the Bind Spectre is going to be released. So the Bind Spectre is one of the things that made me play Witch on release. So you can actually possess slain enemies, for which you will pay spirit. But that's going to be a very interesting mechanic, I think. So you can basically capture and possess rare enemies. So that's going to be really cool. The other thing they announced is mounts. I think they call it companions, but give me a sec while I close this down. So they announced mounts. I think they call it a companion. You should basically see it as a. I think they call it. They see it as a minion, but it's basically a mount that makes you travel, I assume, faster. They also showed options to basically use that mount in combat, so you basically dodge roll out of it. I think you can even fight from it. You could see it using. I think they were using either a ranger or a mercenary, so a ranged class. I'm curious how they're gonna do that with melee classes, because if you put a warrior on it, you obviously have to be way closer to monsters to be able to fight. The other thing is they're introducing about 100 new support gems, about 100 new uniques. So that's going to be interesting. They're going to introduce unique charms, which I think is a good thing because I think that was very limited. They addressed crafting. They're going to give the runes a full rehaul, so there's going to be different level of runes. I think there's going to be 4 type of runes that they showed on the screen. that are either corrupted, and there's all kinds of different approaches to that. So I think that's good. The other thing they announced is a new orb. Let me see where I wrote it down. The Fractured Orb. So the way I understand the Fractured Orb is that you can basically lock in a specific modifier. The challenge there is that you still have to have the modifier on your on the item already. So it's not like you can use an orb to get a specific modifier, but you can lock in a specific modifier so that it doesn't go away when you either Chaos Orb it or that kind of stuff, or basically use the Orb of Annulment to take stuff off. So I think that's a good thing. So you can probably, you know, it's always about the specific, very difficult to get modifiers. So I think that's a good thing. They also talked about a mechanic called the Wisp. I didn't fully understand exactly what it was, the Asmeri or something. I think that might be something that's related to the Dawn of the Hunt League. It showed like companions, so you can summon a sort of a spirit bear and a spirit owl or whatever it was, spirit birds. So I didn't fully understand that mechanic, but that's something they will introduce as well, and that probably, you know, becomes more clear over time. Or maybe it was clear and I just didn't pick it up. Then there is the end game. I think there's quite a lot of changes in the end game as well, which is obviously good. So there's 7 new maps, the way I understand it. I'm not going to go into the different details of the maps, but there's going to be different map mechanics as well. So one of the things is that they basically have a map with sort of glowing stones on it that basically summon a boss, and you basically summon that boss 10 times for each time you defeat the boss for the loot to go basically get better, right? So that's going to be interesting. The other thing is they highlighted unique essences, which you can corrupt, which is interesting as well. You're going to run into exiles. It's basically sort of classes that you can actually play. So it's the 6 classes that we know, and you will be fighting them. And if you defeat them, you basically get their loot, their equipment. So that's I find that an interesting one. They improved lockboxes, so you can get unique lockboxes now. You know, I've not been extremely impressed with lockboxes in this version of early access, so maybe that's going to be a bit better now. What they also say is when you come from the campaign into endgame, they are making that basically those quests that you progress through all the different tier maps, they're gonna make that more interesting, which I think is a good thing, because I thought it was very boring. So I think that's a good thing. I already talked about the Fractured Orb. So you know, that's gonna be introduced. They're gonna change the towers. I think this is a big win. So they said that there's gonna be two-thirds less of towers. So there's a reduction of around 66% of towers, which I think is a very good thing. They increased the radius of the tower that are there significantly, and I think the way that I understood this is that the towers basically should be seen as a map. So you can get modifiers on, I call it modifiers. You can get modifiers on a tower. So you can run into a boss, you can run into a breach, I assume, all that stuff. The other thing is that tablets are going to be changed as well, and they're going to be way more potent, because obviously the radius of the tower increases, so the potency of the tablets must increase as well, right? You cannot have a huge radius and then still have maximum 10 map points that can be impacted by your tablet. So they're addressing that too. Waystones is going to be addressed. They're basically allowing you to respawn. I think it's related to the number of portals that you get, but there is sort of a respawn option there. I need to look into it. I didn't fully understand exactly how that's going to work, so that's going to be interesting. The other thing is with pinnacle bosses that you will not get experience from pinnacle bosses anymore, but if you die on a pinnacle boss, you will also not get the experience penalty. So I think that's probably a good thing, and that probably incentivizes people to still run pinnacle bosses, even though there's no real need for it, I guess. So I think that's good. The other thing that they showed is that I'm not sure if they're gonna use the reforging bench for that, but you can basically combine weapons or items. So they showed combining a bow with a crossbow. So that's gonna be interesting as well. So I think what they were trying to do with that is that if you're lucky, you can get one item out of it. If it's a crossbow or a bow, I think that's at random, but you're gonna get an item out of it, hopefully with the best modifiers on those items. So that's that. That's basically from the first half hour. Then we had a nearly 2-hour Q&A, which I think started really crappy because the audio was really, really bad. I think they improved it after a couple of minutes. They addressed the uniques. They went into that. They addressed crafting. They addressed inventory in a certain way. They talked about the drop of maps being addressed. So you're not gonna, when you're running tier 15 and tier 16 maps, you're not gonna drop tier 1 and tier 5 waystones anymore. So I think that's good. Because that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think that's good. What they didn't address is the easier way, and I think this is especially an issue on console, an easier way to manage your inventory, your stashes with a controller. So I don't think they addressed that. I think they spoke about console a bit, but I don't think they addressed that point. And this is interesting because I thought they would not address it, but 2.5 hours into the stream, they finally started talking about performance. So they did address the performance, and this is where it becomes very, very interesting in my opinion. So I must admit, the guy, I think his name is Jonathan, he must be frustrated, because he basically took a crack at NVIDIA. So the first couple of minutes he basically spent about the issue lying with the NVIDIA driver, and it being with a specific NVIDIA driver which is above a certain version. So basically what he's saying that the old NVIDIA driver didn't have the issue of crashes, but the newer NVIDIA drivers do have the issue. So there's two things to it. One, they're basically implementing a fix. I don't think they have the issue fixed, but they basically, what they said is they will pause the game and basically transfer your, let's say, your session into a new instance, and then basically let you unpause in that new instance. So we'll see how that works. The other thing they said is that you can potentially roll back to an older version of the driver of your NVIDIA card. I'm not going to do that. I don't see that happening, because I think besides maybe fixing the issue with your Path of Exile 2 game, I think I'm running into all kinds of other issues if I roll back to an older version. So I was not planning to do that, but I wanted to lay it on the table for you if that's potentially a fix for you. But I thought it was a bit, I'm just gonna say it, I thought it was a bit unprofessional to take a stab at NVIDIA for that. They did the same with Microsoft, not extremely professional in my opinion. And then the last one, they basically took a stab at Intel, because there is some kind of CPU issue with 13th generation processors, and I think it was related to the decompressor part he was talking about. I'm gonna look that part because I couldn't fully follow it, but yeah, I think that's the quick summary of this more than 2.5 hours live stream. They do say that they improve performance quite a bit. So hopefully, if you're not suffering, if you're not being impacted by the crashes that much, hopefully the performance improvement will be significant, and the frame rate drop will be reduced. So, all right, that's about it. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna take a break. This took way longer than I expected. I'll probably be online a bit later tonight for a bit of Path of Exile 2. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.